everyone, and welcome to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, joining you today in studio with my good friends Bob and Mr. Smith. How is everyone doing? How's everyone doing here?
Good.
Good.
Life's busy.
Very busy?
Yeah.
Got a new car?
A new car.
You like your new car?
I don't really drive it, so I don't know. I got my wife's old car.
Wow.
So much better than my car.
Okay.
Wait, are you actually saying that this is an upgrade?
For me, it is.
So this is Bob. He's like, yeah, we bought a new car. I don't get to drive it, but I got my wife's old car. It's like a new car.
It's so true, though. This is a Subaru Outback versus a Chevy Cruze. Now I can actually get through the snow. It's so much different.
Wow.
Yeah, and I can breathe in it because my old car is basically going to catch on fire any day now. So yeah, it's good.
Very good.
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
I had driving the windows open, and it was like freezing out. So
Yeah. So we were just talking about a little bit about Dragonbane and Forbidden Lands and Stronghold rules.
look, I'm riding that hype train hard.
Yeah, I know you are. It's there's always been this idea, and I'll be honest with you, we've never really fully explored that aspect of play, even though you and I have always domain management.
Domain management, yeah.
Even though you and I have been just in love with that since
Yeah.
we first read about it back in first edition, and then when they started taking that away in like third edition, I remember being like, oh no, and then they made
That was our
Stronghold.
problem.
They made
Yeah.
Stronghold Builder's Guidebook, but it was like too balanced, and it was like suddenly you were trying to like,
Right.
do you buy a +5 sword or do you buy a drawbridge?
Well, the other issue too is third edition started the change with modern game design, right? I mean, the slogan was "Back to the Dungeon."
Right.
Because apparently Tracy Hickman destroyed everything as we know it.
Yeah,
Poor guy gets blamed for everything. Anyways, but
he does.
he does get blamed for everything. So back to dungeon, right? So you just never had a need to transition your gameplay. And so if you look at a lot of our third edition games, they were always like a level 15 game looked pretty much like a level 3 game, just with more powers.
Well, this is the truth of the modern sort of the modern TTRPG, which is that there is no tiers of play.
right.
It's just it's the same experience throughout the entire game. You start the game, you're fighting monsters, you're getting treasure. 5 levels later, you're fighting monsters, you're getting treasure.
Level appropriate damage.
Level
Or
appropriate
monsters.
damage.
And while
We need that. We need that
while
as a
fourth
sound
edition,
effect.
like fifth edition has like their 4. I think they have 4 tiers of play officially.
What,
Fifth edition
fourth?
does.
Oh, fifth?
Yeah, I think they talk about like I don't remember.
I don't remember. Oh, yeah, because you got like hometown heroes. It's like 1 to 3.
Yeah, something
Then
like
you
that.
got like the equivalent of heroic, Paragon and Epic.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so obviously even 4th edition, which has these very clearly defined tiers, heroic, Paragon, Epic,
yeah.
it's still fighting monsters and kicking ass and taking
It is.
names. It's not like the stakes are bigger.
Yeah.
The difference between a level 21 power, which is at Epic tier,
Yeah.
and a level 18 power,
Yeah.
which is at Paragon, are very different. Because like you are in that next zone. So they do make it at least feel different. But fundamentally,
You're still doing the same stuff.
you're still doing the same stuff.
Yeah.
The idea of a game that actually legitimately transitions into
Yeah.
a different gameplay mode is very uncommon.
4th edition via Dragon Magazine, and then later on one of the Splat books, did have this concept of strongholds that was introduced specifically for Paragon play. Because that was the kind of tier. It was supposed to try
Absolutely.
to emulate the old
Companion,
basic.
Master Companion. Yeah.
But, and I don't know if this is just because of the run that 4E had or whatever, it was bare bones. So it just wasn't remotely in the depth that Companion and Master gave you. Things like Rules Compendium.
Was
gave you.
Kingmaker supposed to do something like that for PF2?
Yeah, so
I never got into
Kingmaker is
it,
about
so-
domain control and they introduced some cool stuff there. And then a lot of those rules got put into the Ultimate Campaign book in PF1, which is an interesting book because when you read that book, you get super excited about stuff, but then they're kind of hit on the head. When you actually try to use some of it in play, it was just overbalanced and sterilized, right? And the best way I can describe that is if you want to see how something like Earn Income in PF2 came to be, look at the Ultimate Campaign book because
From
this
PF1.
is from PF1 because this is something where it's taking these really cool concepts, it's trying to empower you to do them, but it does it in such a sterile and overly balanced way that honestly, there's no reason to do it. And you end up in this weird spot where you as a GM or a player are trying to justify to yourself building this stronghold or keep or like that at the expense of lots of treasure, your character power for very little benefit, right?
Well, especially when you're playing a game where, every bonus matters.
Every bonus matters.
And so it's like, am I really going to, trade away my armor upgrade so that I can have like nicer drapes?
Right. And this was the problem.
Yeah.
Is it became more of this kind of weird fluff thing. But then at that point, why do we have these rules? And these rules are also very restrictive and ultimately damaging to your character balance. Yeah. So most groups looked at it and go, oh, that's cool. And then kind of now, Kingmaker was specifically about that, and I've heard a lot of great. We never played Kingmaker, but like I played the video game, and a lot of people talk about Kingmaker, and it was, a lot of people like it. They remade it obviously for PF2. That version had some problems with it, but I'm not trying to say that these things are bad. No one used them, but they certainly lacked a lot of the transition that the older games had, where this was a natural thing that you did. Like you moved into this because your characters didn't spend their entire career going into holes in the ground murdering things because you won. At a certain point, you were a lord. This is why you were adventuring. You acquire enough wealth where like
you retire.
Basically. Yeah. And now your problems are that of like a king, right?
Yeah. And Derek always said that during like Rise of Runelord. He's like, were you just going to adventure for, like, your idea is you're going to adventure, my guy Azius was going to adventure and then retire and own a bar. Like, that was this whole idea.
Right.
I was trying to do it at the end there.
And I think that there was an idea because, Save Versus says, he thank you for the super chat, Save Versus. Technically, has that ever changed? At level 1, you fight the blue slimes. At level 5, you fight the red slimes. Level 10, you fight the yellow slimes. The answer is yes, it did choose to change because, again, we are going to talk about Microscope. Don't worry. And campaign.
This is just what we were talking about
tangent.
as before we went live.
We literally started on a tangent.
Don't worry. If you're just joining the stream, look down. There's always some asshole who tells everyone when the actual stream starts.
Right, when the real.
So probably about 42 and 30 seconds. 42 minutes, 30 seconds in.
You're taking that. Take the over under on 42:30.
I'll take the under on that.
You'll take the under.
I'll steer this back in.
Okay, you'll steer this in. All right, but the fact of the matter is that the game was designed in such a way that like.
Steve gets it.
Steven knows.
Roll for Combat knows what's up. Actually, pending, but Steven from Roll for Combat and I were in conversations the other day, and we were talking Origins planning.
I bought my tickets.
And one of his personal...
Get it out, early tickets.
He's a huge baseball fan.
Yeah, I love it.
I don't know if he's never been to Progressive Field or if he's never...
for the Guardians?
Yeah, I don't know if he's... Or maybe he wants to... But either way...
It ain't that impressive.
It's a thing for... He wants to go to every thing.
So do I.
And so he's going to probably fly in a day early because there's a game.
Oh,
he's
sweet.
And then he drive down with me.
Sweet. Yeah.
Origins.
I'll meet you guys out there for the game.
I know. That's what I said.
Yeah.
I actually
They're not going to be good, so cheap tickets will be cheap.
That's what I said. He says, we're going to the game. I already got my ticket.
Yeah.
Right,
I just know early bird for Origins is like till the beginning of February, like first week in February. So.
But to answer Shadram's question, the fact of the matter is
for myself.
at around 9th level or so, or 10th level in old versions of D&D, your character really stopped gaining power. Like for example, we think of fighters, you think of a barbarian, you think of leveling up, you think of gaining D10 plus your con, D12 plus your con, extra hit points. In first edition D&D, once you get to about 9th level, it was like +2.
Yeah, no roll.
Just +2. And it's because at a certain point, that power level plateaued off. And that's an important thing to consider when we think about domain play, which is this. Ironically, 5th edition probably would be pretty good for this because, except for the hit point bloat.
The hit point bloat's bad, but yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, a high level character in what's more powerful in Pathfinder 2, right? 200 level 1 soldiers or 1 level 20 character.
1 level 20 character.
Absolutely. And there's
1
no
level 10 character.
Not even close.
Actually, Pathfinder 2, probably level 6, you're still fine.
Yeah. Because you quickly get to a point where they can't even hit you on a crit in Pathfinder 2.
Right.
So the fact of the matter is, as a level 20 character or a level 15 character or level whatever, you don't need an army. Because if 1,000 orcs show up to ravage the land as the army of the Iron Fist descends, you just go, I'll go solo that.
Remember DTX? When Derek rolled that bullshit red dragon and
it was legit.
An adult red dragon attacking a level 1 party or whatever.
We had a bunch of people with
we had 20
archers.
fucking archers, right? And
and let's just say the dragon ran away.
They were good archers.
They were good archers.
They rolled well.
Yeah. So again, it's one of those things where there's a great line from Game of Thrones where Tyrion's talking to Tywin and he says what do you think gives you power? He's like, I think armies give you power. And so the idea is that like a certain level and D&D, when you were a fighter and you were like, look, my responsibilities have grown, I want to defend this land. Modern day thought is that'll be me. It'll literally be me Supermaning into there and killing all the orcs going full Muso
Homelander
mode.
style.
Homelander style.
Our third edition party was literally called the Super Friends.
Right, because it was a joke that they were basically like the Justice League. But the fact of the matter is if you were like a 12th or 13th or 14th level caster or a character in older versions of D&D and you're like, I want to defend this land, you couldn't do it. If you fought 20-something, 30-something orcs, they'd probably kill you. So if you wanted to be able to operate at scale, you needed men and armies and soldiers.
Even before you got castles and stuff, to move into expert play, to which really focus on the wilderness travel, you'll look at some of these random encounter tables and like you could generate dozens of orcs, right? We're talking like level 4 or 5, right? Like if 30 orcs show up, you're done.
Yeah.
Right. But the idea was even then, from the earliest levels of the game, you are recruiting and building hirelings and getting a little squad together, right? So now it's 30 orcs against 10 good men, which is awesome, right? And that's the other thing people often overlook.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah, that's good.
Especially in modern, like I get it. Nowadays, if you're a 5e content creator and you accidentally Google Gary Gygax, all of a sudden you're more than qualified to go and have $1 million Kickstarter. That's awesome. But there was a little bit of nuance in the game that's lost nowadays, which is that yes, the game was deadly, but you were not actually expected to die all the time.
Right.
Because what was happening is that it'd be your hirelings and henchmen and
there was a lot
cohorts
of you hired people a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important.
We tried to get some of that. I thought we tried to get that into DTX a little bit,
Well,
and
no,
it kind of fell.
5e characters were too powerful in DTX.
Yeah,
The
it
problem
fell flat.
The
It was
problem
like a
is
waste.
Yes.
At a certain point, you almost feel bad because you're
I
like,
remember you had a guy, I think, and then you're like, just don't.
Those are all the people at the camp.
Yeah.
And what did we do? We left them at the camp.
yeah, because and I get it too. Like there's other factors, right? Which is as the game gets more complicated.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Managing more people becomes more complicated.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, imagine when we were playing basic D&D. Remember basic? Imagine having a couple, hirelings on your side. What would that add? 30 seconds. Just
Yeah, because it was so easy anyway.
Quick,
Yeah,
it was so
yeah.
fast. It was fine. It would just rip around. But I think that's a very good point, which is a lot of people assume that this was a 0 to 100. But it wasn't that way. When you started off, you were broke. You were, you had nothing. And so and then you would get a little chest of gold or silver. Then the next time when you're like 3rd level, 4th level, now you have 5 people with you. You've got men at arms and you have loyal retainers and maybe you have, camp followers. And then by the time you're 8th or 9th level, you have maybe, blacksmiths and scribes and sages who work for you in town as you sort of move through this
Was it
process.
Yojimbo?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Exactly, yeah.
You have your own bodyguard.
I need my Yojimbo.
And you've seen Game of Thrones, right?
Yep.
All right, so there's a perfect scene I think that encapsulates old school D&D play in Game of Thrones. Season 1, it's when Lannister catches Ned Stark.
Okay.
And I can't remember everything. King's
Derek,
Landing.
Derek knows all the names.
Jamie Lannister,
Ned Stark, and King's Landing with the candle. It was the butler. No, Clue joke. No one here plays Clue. So then this is a scene where Jamie crosses the line, right? And remember, at this point, if you're not familiar with the books, and this is the first time watching the show, you don't know that George R.R. Martin is a sadist yet, right?
Okay.
So you're like, oh man, the main characters are going to be fine. Ned's totally going to win. He's the hero, right?
I thought that.
And that scene was brutal, right? But think about it. Ned was fine, more or less. He got hurt. Now, all of his buddies, his cohorts, they got brutally slaughtered. And so it built all this tension up in the scene because you're like, oh man, the Starks are getting their ass kicked. What's going on? But if Ned was the PC there, he's fine. He lived, right? But all of his followers got killed or injured, right?
Well,
and that's how old school D&D would play.
So how did that feel back in old school D&D?
Well, it's hard for us to say because we weren't playing.
Because I would think that you just lost a ton of resource.
Well, but
that would hurt.
I will say this. There's this weird thing that can happen where I've seen this happen more times than I can possibly count, which is the players will end up hiring essentially meat shields, you know, hirelings, soldiers, you know,
Cannon fodder.
And within a session or two, the PC is like jumping in front of the bullet for their hireling because they feel this level of responsibility. And they're like, you know, I feel like I need to take care of them. But here's the thing.
We were a bunch of softies.
You even kind of know at us deep down, what happens if I kill your character in basic D&D? You just make a new one.
2 seconds.
But if I kill your hireling, in a way, she's gone.
Yeah.
Right? And so in a weird way,
Like Bob's still there.
right, Bob is still there. His new avatar will come in.
Right.
It's Bob Jr. You know, high five your corpse as you fall to the ground.
And because it's Bob, the character isn't even going to really be that different.
Right? And so as a result, you know, there's a weird detachment from your own death. But it's also obviously it's a pain in the ass. So like having a crew of people around you. I mean, look, there's a reason we call them red shirts. This is why it worked in Star Trek. You couldn't be killing Spock and McCoy and Kirk every episode.
Right.
But if you want to set that the tone is deadly, you got to kill somebody.
Right.
So you kill the minor characters, you know, and that makes it feel like, wow, there is death in our game. There is a danger here, but it's not our main character most of the time. Anyway.
Demon says if the hirelings die, you don't got to pay them.
That's true.
That's true.
Although, you know, a good, respectable party will pay out to their families.
As Ben pointed out.
Which I remember didn't you go in L5R? You went back of the slain enemy and went and told all their families.
That was different. That was a matter
Respect,
of
honor. Yes.
Because, again, in L5R, samurai are nobles. So it's not like D&D where it's like, oh, I'm just going to brutally murder you in the street and then loot your corpse, right? Like, you are hated enemies. Like Crane and Lion fighting. It was actually, you know, kudos to Derek. It was basically a reenactment of that scene I was talking about in Game of Thrones. Because
that's true.
We got jumped on our way out of the Imperial City.
It was very much like that, yes.
It was great. Except this time, you know, the Starks kicked ass, right? Because we had magic. Turns out magic is really powerful. Thank you, Bob.
Yes.
But like, so you kill this noble, like, well, yeah, he's still a noble, and there's still rules and protocol, right?
Right.
And like, was it dangerous walking into Crane territory? Yes, absolutely, because they could be assholes and stab it. But here's the thing: took a lot of balls to do that, and when you did it, not only do you save your own honor and do the right thing, everyone else is like, look at that badass.
Right. Well, it's like you said, it's about the respect the thing. One of my favorite movies is Kingdom of Heaven, which is I think it's Ridley Scott, and it's about
the First Crusade.
It's I think it's like the Fourth Crusade, but it's the Crusaders in the Holy Land, and they're fighting, and there's the Muslim leader Salahuddin, and then there's the leper king, King Baldwin, who's played by Edward Norton, but he's uncredited and he wears a mask. But he's got leprosy, you know, so he's like really weak and dying and falling apart. And there's this huge epic confrontation, and they're about to go to they're like, you know, and the Christian king is like, withdraw or we will all die here. And he's like, I promise you, because he had some asshole underling who like broke the peace. And he's like, I promise you that asshole will punish him. Yeah. And, you know, he killed a bunch of Muslims, but like the Muslim leader was like, this guy's a king. He said he's going to take care of his people and take care of it. Yeah. I believe him. And he goes, so the king goes, do we have terms? And he goes, we have terms. And he goes, you know, thank you. And then he goes, the Muslim guy goes, I will send you my physicians. Right. So he's going to send his personal doctors
to help take care of their sick. And
at the time, historically, like the Arabic physicians were like the best in the world. Right.
So it's just one of those things where it's like, you know, again, like, you know, it's like there's that level of respect. Yes.
All right, got a couple super chats.
Yeah, what do we got,
Bob? Damien said that there's no better ballpark than the PNC Park, which is the Pittsburgh Pirates Park, which is absolutely correct. That is the best one by far.
How is that the best one?
It's one of the best ballpark designs. It has one of the best feels. It's one of the newer ones in terms of like, I don't know, of the 30 stadiums. How do they handle
the parking? Because typically Pittsburgh has like some of the worst parking.
Yeah, you don't park next to the stadium. Or you could boat up.
Well, it's because whoever thought, you know, I get it.
It feels like a small bar park, but it's very nicely done.
I get it. You got two major rivers combining to make the mighty Ohio, which is going to cut across the Midwest all the way down to the Mississippi. What a great place to build a city. Except you're building it at the bottom of what is essentially a toilet. Because it's just like, it's a big bowl carved out of valleys and hills. It's like the worst city to get around in ever.
That then 3 to 4 months of the year is also filled with ice and snow.
Right.
the city of bridges.
It does have a lot of bridges, that's for sure.
Which are also frozen.
Cybersmith also said, just saying hi before I have to make some flatbread. But then he later on said, last super chat. But TOS, which I think is a Star Trek thing.
The original series.
Red shirts died less than gold.
Interesting. I could see that because like a lot of the gold characters were like the kind of like the background engineer kind of type character and stuff like that, or like the random other person.
You just show them exploding off screen.
You see them getting blown off of a panel or something. All right,
that's the last chat. So let's steer this conversation back to Microscope.
Did we catch Damien there at the hireling dies? Don't got pan? Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
Yep.
We did get to when the hireling dies, we don't have to pay him. All right, so today, what we are going to do is sort of do a couple of things. Number one is we're going to talk about Microscope,
which I don't even know what it is.
You don't even know.
I know what it is.
Right.
I've never played it. It's always sounded awesome.
Right. So I want this to be helpful for you in a couple of different levels. Let me sort of set the expectations first. The first thing that we will do is we will talk about Microscope. Okay, we will talk about the book itself. We'll talk about the game of Microscope, which is a fun.
It's an actual game you can play.
It is an actual game that you can play.
It's funny that remember we always talked about like world building, and I'm like, we just world building. Like, we can play Microscope, and I'm like, that just sounds like a world building thing. No, it's an actual game.
There is an actual game to this. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll teach Bob, and we'll also teach you, if you don't know, we'll teach you about Microscope. We'll teach you how to play the game. But the second thing that we'll do is Aaron and I will talk to Bob and to you all about how we have used Microscope over the years, along with some other tools to, as I would say over the last decade or so, we have become much more, once upon a time we were, we played D&D 3rd edition and Pathfinder 1 and we made our campaigns and we just rolled dice and killed monsters and took, but as time has gone on, we have really started to see and learn about other ideas. And one of those is collaborative campaign building.
Now we've added a bunch of convoluted steps in between all those things.
That's right. So, I think something that we've talked about on this channel, and certainly when I talk about how to make your campaigns better, and we'll get into why this is, but I think collaborative campaign building is a tremendous
and we did a little bit in Root, right? And Root was super fun.
Yeah, Root, and we'll talk about Root. We'll talk about there's some games out there that are doing it well.
Ultima.
Root, Fabula Ultima.
I'm sad I didn't get to do Fabula.
You did not. You missed that session.
But when we play it next, I'm ready.
So there's some really cool, and there's some other options. There's some other things that we'll talk about. But then Aaron and I will also sort of show you how we have done it in the past with electronic tools, and you can do it remotely, and we can talk about all that. Now
we have a fully completed Microscope game that we used actually for a Adventure Conquer Kingdom game. It's,
Axe.
It's based off of Labyrinth Lord, which is another retro clone. But start to finish, full thing that we can go into obsessive detail. It's way too much, but it's a good example to be like, this is what you could do with this if you're trying to apply it in this concept.
Sweet.
Yeah. So I don't know today because we talked about this internally as a group, and we do have a tip goal out there tonight and a super chat goal. And super chat goal is if we can get to our super chat goal, then when we go and do our next actual play, we will sort of you saw the Root session 0, but the Root session 0 had that sort of built-in
If you haven't,
system.
Make sure you go look at it.
You can go look at our Root session 0, but we'll sort of formulate a collaborative campaign building, and we'll do that from that perspective. To that end, I don't think. The advantage of doing a collaborative campaign is to have all the players present, right? And obviously, whatever our future campaign is going to be is going to include more than just Smith and Bob. And so, while we may do some examples and kind of show you some ideas, I don't know that we're going to build a campaign tonight, right? We're not going to sit there and actually build out a campaign. That's something we would save, if we reach our tip goal or super chat goal. For a future endeavor. Right?
Our hope is kind of like this is like a session -1, if you will, where we explain what this concept is. And then later on, as we mature what we're going to use this for and for a real play, we'll make a playlist or something where, hey, we're going to explain what this is. And then the first session 0, because there'll probably be a few, because we spend way too long doing these things. We'll go into the actual world building just straight out using this tool.
Yeah, world building, we did... what was that Star Swarm or something.
Starforge.
Starforge, and we spent like a whole 4 hours just doing the world.
Right.
You know.
Right. And so again, there's I think we're here to answer your questions, but ideally, I think you will all come away with this. I'm really thinking that you'll come away with this with some good ideas and some cool ways to sort of put this into practice.
Yeah, the one other thing I would add on that is we're going to talk about a lot of different ways you can use this stuff, and they're not all right or not all wrong. It really depends on what you're trying to do and what's right for you. So we're going to try to talk about the pros and cons of each things, and then also like go and maybe we could have tried doing it like this, or we could try doing it like this. So look at this video as a lot of just like different ideas and tools and capabilities, more like a toolbox, and find what you like and steal that out. Right, you're not going to use the whole thing in one go typically.
Right. And and I'll kind of interject with like some sidebars about like different ideas that I've had and used and tried over the years. Some things work, some things don't. Ben says typical Microscope session lasts about 15 sessions. That's about right. My favorite example, the favorite of this of all time was we were going to sit down. We were going to play a 13th Age campaign, but we were going to do 13th Age goes to level 10. So we were going to do the 10 session version of 13th Age, where you play 10 sessions, you level up at the end of every session.
Sounds great.
Kind of more of an action-packed, quick focused. So we're like, cool, we'll build a collaborative world and we'll go from there. I think we spent 4 sessions, at least, maybe 5, doing the campaign world building and the history building for a campaign that we knew was going to be 10 sessions long.
I like it.
Yeah, it was crazy. Side note about that too, which was hilarious. So Kaz was still here at the time when that process started, and then during the creation of the campaign, he moved. And about a year later, we got to near the end of the campaign. And one of the things, it was a joke because Derek hated it. One of the things that Kaz introduced into the game was he took Derek's dragons and then made him these like weird wingless plague monsters that could teleport around. And Derek's like, what? Like, this is horrible. This ruins everything. Why would you do that? And the cat is like, peace. And then moved up to Seattle, right? So like a year later, we're like level 9, level 10. Like it's like the end of the campaign, right? And Derek just drops this big sack of dragon plague, right? It's like a boss. This is whole fight, and it's disgusting. It's brutal. And I just remember taking a picture and sending that to Kaz. It was like, thanks, asshole.
Right? Like I had to respect. I had to respect the process. We created something. We had to go with it.
That's right.
Okay, so this is Microscope, a fractal role-playing game of epic histories. I don't know that we've debated this before. I don't necessarily.
Is this a role-playing game?
I don't know that I would call it a role-playing game, but people can define things how they want.
Thanks, Sean.
I think in modern nomenclature, I would call this more like collaborative journaling.
Oh, Sean Clayton, our boy, Mike.
Get this out of the way.
Our boy Mike. What is it? Tiberius Tabuno.
Yeah,
Mike
Tabuno.
The assistant principal.
Yeah.
Also known as Ass Prince.
He bought this at Origins that year.
He bought Microscope?
Yeah, while we were there.
Yeah. Dropping $100 just to say, we're getting this out of the way.
Yeah.
All right, so there you go.
He bought it.
This is officially session -1.
This is officially session -1. Sean, thank you very, very, very much. Hopefully, again, you can actually play with us this year at Origins.
Look, he said he's got a spare bedroom, so someone's be bunking at his house.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Okay, no, it's easy. If we want him to play, we just need to have drinks at the game.
That's right.
Because then he'll show up because there's drinks.
We just play at the bars instead of bringing the game back to the
We've
wherever.
played Fiasco in the bar before. It was legit, and also we almost got arrested / thrown out.
I definitely thought Aaron was going to get us thrown out of the bar. Anyways, a lot of Long Island iced teas.
Lots.
And a lot of montage scenes of you training with Glamdring in order to enact your revenge so that Tim could sleep with Brandon Sanderson.
Hey, that's correct.
Okay.
Very good. He had a huge cock.
Yeah.
Brandon Sanderson, not Tim.
All right.
I'm sure Tim's cock's fine. I haven't seen it, but Brandon Sanderson's was massive.
Microscope is a game by Ben Robbins. Now, a lot of people may not be familiar with Ben Robbins, even though Ben Robbins has made a number of games. So he has Microscope, and there's an expansion of Microscope called Microscope Explorer, which is kind of more of like advice, tips, and some starting ideas for how to play Microscope.
Okay.
But he's also created additional games like Kingdom and Follow. Okay, and
that Follow cover looks amazing.
These are all games that they're very different from what you might traditionally think of when you think about a role-playing game. They're very collaborative. They're typically they're GM-less. there's not even really usually dice mechanics in them.
Okay.
You know, you just sort of decide certain things and you communicate and you talk. So it's a very, very more sort of more intellectual process than a game per se. But, you know, there are rules. There are rules, so it's a game. But a lot of people may not have known these games, or they may not own them. They may have heard of them. But what a lot of people have heard of is Ben Robbins has a blog where he is known as the Lame Mage, and the name of his blog is Ars Ludi. And so Ben Robbins is the creator of the concept or idea of the West Marches. Oh. So that he wrote that blog post a long time ago. So, you know, a lot of people know Ben Robbins from that, but I know him from Microscope and from these other games. So anyways, Microscope is a game about creating histories. And the way that the game fundamentally and structurally works is you are going to, it's a collaborative game, and you go around the circle, and everybody is adding, I'm just rolling here, I guess scrolling here. Everybody is adding events, here we go, to history.
Okay.
Okay. And so the way that this game works, there's a couple of key concepts that we'll get into. We'll break it down to how you actually play, but I want to give you the sort of the overview. The key here is if you've ever edited in Adobe
Photoshop,
an Adobe Premiere Pro or whatever. So those things are called non-linear editors. Okay, because the idea is, you know, like if you have a videotape, that's a linear edit, you know, because you stop and then you have to get new tape and you start again. A non-linear edit basically means you can scroll back in time, right? I can be near the end of my video and say, oh, I wanted to fix the intro, and I can go to the intro and add a new clip or add some new B-roll. The idea of Microscope is that you and your group or friends are going to build a history of a world, a history of a people, a history of a town, a history of a city. You decide the scope. It could be the history of a baseball franchise.
So Microscope itself is a standalone game,
Yep.
and then people use it as like
we do.
We do.
So this might not be a thing for other people.
It may not be.
I think people do use it, but it is created and sold as an individual product that has nothing to do with traditional.
So you're literally just creating a history of a world of something.
The normal game is, hey guys, let's all get together. And for the next 3 or 4 hours, we're going to write things down on note cards, and then we're going to lay them out in front of us to create a timeline that will show how, you know, this baseball franchise went from being founded in 1901 to winning the pennant in 2025.
I thought you were going to go with like 2016, and it was a Cubs thing. I was like,
fine, sure. Yeah, we got brutalized. But the key thing here is that it is not in linear time order.
Got it.
You could start.
You could insert things.
You can insert things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what you can't do, of course, is, you know, rewrite history. You know, if something's true, you can't, you know, say, oh, that never happened.
Is there things in here that are like suggestions versus truths?
No.
So everything that like puts on the board is truth.
Yes.
Okay.
Not only that, believe it or not, this is not a collaborative game, or rather, I should say, it is not about collusion.
Yes.
When it is.
Oh, okay.
It's collaborative, but it's not.
I was like, I thought this whole thing was collaborative.
So when it's your turn,
You're playing together, but you're not.
It's not. You're not colluding. So what I mean by that is, technically, and we'll talk about why there's certain elements of this game that I think
you're not trying to get a consensus.
Yeah, you're not trying to build consensus. On your turn, technically, everyone else is supposed to shut up.
Got it. So you can ask for opinions, but really yours is the only thing that matters at the end of the day.
You're
you're not
really encouraged not to do it.
You're really encouraged. I mean, of course, it's, you know, it's a fun free game, and you know, not free game, but it's a fun free for all game, and you can do whatever you want. You could ask, but you're really encouraged not to do that.
Huh.
You are supposed to. You have the spotlight is on you.
Okay.
Now there is sort of an option that Aaron and I kind of expanded for use with TTRPGs. We'll talk about it. That may allow you to sort of do a temperature check of the group.
Does this game have a winner?
No.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So that's why I said
you're just building a timeline.
Yeah. Okay.
And at some point, everyone goes, "I'm good," and you just kind of sit back and you enjoyed the experience of sort of constructing.
I mean, I've
this
loved
timeline.
every world building experience we've had. Like I was like, that was fun.
Right.
And so then you guys were like, oh, you should try Microscope. I'm like, one of these days, let's do it.
Think of it this way: the same way that some people really enjoy playing Path Builder. They never actually play the characters. They just do the part that you're supposed to do at the beginning, where you make a character. And they're like, I just make characters over and over again.
Yeah.
This
All
is
the
like
path builder people.
This is like the idea of like, I just love making campaign worlds.
This is the GM's path builder.
This is like the GM's version of playing path builder.
Also, Shatteram, I want you to hold on to that thought.
So again, the idea here is we as a group are going to build this timeline and this history. And that's the whole point of the game. And we'll get into some of the nitty gritty details of it. But from a TTRPG perspective, what we do with this game and with some other tools is we turn it into a collaborative campaign or a collaborative world building exercise. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that.
Let's talk about the why.
The why, because the why is very important. And the reason, full stop, the reason for the why is because games are better when the players care, are invested, and know what the fuck is going on.
100%.
Yep. One of the hardest things you can do with players is if you're doing a homebrew world, you create this entire world. You have this whole fiction. You have stars and planets and names of rivers and cities and kings and your own gods. So much information that you as a game master might be intimately familiar with. And now you got to teach your players how to do that on top of playing the actual game, right? And that's really hard to do because you're either looking at long exposition dumps. You're looking at, hey, I wrote a 50-page player guide. Please read it for the session.
Oh, gosh.
Right?
That sounds like my worst nightmare.
Okay, right. Or you're like, okay, guys, in about 12 sessions, you should probably have a fairly good understanding of the world and how it works.
That sounds
Right?
pretty bad, too.
You know, because in their minds, people, again, going back to Game of Thrones, in their minds, people are like, oh, it will be like Game of Thrones, where the world is revealed to you over time. Except that's an exciting TV show with monsters and editors and pacing, right? D&D doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah.
It can take a long time to build up that momentum to get your players buying, right? And we know beginnings are a delicate time. You know, the first
You can make or break a
5
campaign.
sessions
Yeah.
could be the only sessions you get, right?
Yeah.
And if your players don't get hooked by like sessions 3 or so,
Yeah, and it's sort of like
Right.
if they help build the world, they already have
That's exactly
they're,
right.
they're pot committed. They already have a hook in.
Derek doesn't have to tell you what the
Yeah.
Isles of Arcadia are
Yeah.
if you made it.
I mean, I
But
can remember some of the root stuff from back in my head.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
like what you described there. They're pot committed.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was like, hey, it's a fun little bundle.
I've already invested.
Well, the other thing too is, and I think this also comes with a sense of maturity that evolves out of players over time, which is, and I get it. Like there is definitely that player who wants to be like, I want to be surprised.
Sure.
I want to learn about the campaign world. And I do think, you know, this is something that Aaron and I think we'll talk about later, but you know, we're not the best at it sometimes, which is even when you're in this process, especially because for a TTRPG,
Yeah.
it is a little different because in a TTRPG, you're all doing it collaboratively, but one of you is going to be the game master.
Yeah.
And so I think it's fine. I think it's good. And I think it's correct to still draw maps, but leave blanks.
I was gonna say you could just leave suggestions and don't fill that part out.
And so that way there's always
Unresolved.
going to be elements of the game world that the players don't know about. And there can still be that process of exploration and sort of discovery.
But you also have the flip side where players think they know something, and then during the game, the GM introduces a twist or something new on that, a change to that,
Yeah.
where the players realize the impact of that.
But imagine you're playing a game and you're building this history, you know, and you're kind of cribbing and borrowing from some of your favorite novels and your favorite TV shows, which is totally fine.
Yeah. Full disclosure, when we show you the board later, I was shameless. I just stole anything that I thought was cool
But
and stuffed it in
imagine
there.
during the course of, you know, months earlier, you all were around building this campaign world. And, you know, there was this thing, it was like a war between the elves and the dwarves. And the elves created like, you know, they created like 3 ultimate weapons, and they're like these crystal gems. And there's like one of the moon, one of the sun, and one of the earth, right? And they're like the triad or something like that. And you're like, it's kind of like the Triforce, but you know, it's kind of different. But, you know, like, exactly, you know, because you might have been inspired by Legend of Zelda, but you're like, and the elves had it. They're like Hyruleans, so it's kind of the same. And so, you know, there's there's like the blue one of the sky, there's like the dark one of the earth, and then there's like the burning one of the sun, or with the moon and the sun or whatever. And everyone's and the war shifts, and then like the dwarves call, and then like someone's like, well, what are the dwarves? And someone's like, the dwarves strike a deal with the demons. And you're like, what? Now the dwarves are demonic. And you're building this whole thing in the epic war. And then of course, you know, the cataclysm, the world's destroyed, whatever. Imagine playing your RPG game, and the players are in this really ancient ruin, and they fight this horrific, you know, monster. It was like this spirit, and then this massive tome or crypt opens up, and you describe this pulsating red gem with a certain pattern on it. And every player at your table knows exactly what that is because they might have been the one who fucking built it, which is that's one of the elven gemstones. We just discovered one of the 3 most powerful artifacts in the game. Whereas if you did that in a normal game, everyone would
It'd
go,
be cool, but
no, you wouldn't even know what it was.
Yeah.
Oh,
I throw
is
it
that
in
an
my backpack.
artifact?
Yeah.
What does it do? What are the stats?
Yeah, and the other thing to realize is there's a distinct difference, and I think this is something that people should lean into between what the player knows and what the PC knows, right? And drama has, dramatic irony, right, is the whole concept in theater and stage. So it's been around for thousands of years, where dramatic irony is caused when the audience knows something that the characters on stage don't, right? So like, Juliet, Romeo comes in to see Juliet. We know she's just sleeping.
Right.
So when Romeo takes the poison and drinks it, it's super dramatic for us because we know the stakes.
Right.
If we didn't know that Juliet, we would think she's dead,
Right.
just like Romeo.
And
did.
Romeo made a totally reasonable decision.
And Romeo would be like, "Wow, this guy really loves him. What a decision. What a go out together." But that scene does not work
Right.
if without you, the audience, knowing that Juliet is just sleeping or just whatever, not dead. And so the same thing is true with RPGs. And I think that having that distinction between what the players know and what the PC knows, your PC may not know what that item is, but your PC isn't the one fucking playing the game. You are. The player is. And you want to create experience and you want to create feelings for your players. And so when the players get to really appreciate, when they see something, there's a million times when you see this in a movie or a book where it's like you, the reader, understand the significance of what just happened, even if the characters don't, right? And so like that's very cool.
Yes, very cool.
And I think that more RPGs should lean into that.
It's interesting.
The other related thing I think is very important, and I apologize if this offends anyone whose first RPG was 5e or Pathfinder 2. I'm a big believer and proponent of it. These are role-playing games that we play. It's not all on the GM. Like the players have a responsibility and a duty at the table. You're showing up to a game, and I'm on the Discord, you'll see me talk about this, right? The players have a responsibility, a job to like know how to play the game, know how their characters work, work together in a team, all that stuff, right? But they also have a responsibility, in my opinion, to like help bring this world alive. A lot of groups sometimes think it's all on the GM and they're just there to be entertained.
Yeah,
right?
tell me the story.
Tell me the story, right? But this really goes back to that, hey guys, we're doing this together. And yeah, we have a director, we have the editor, right? He's going to help kind of guide this. But like, you can have a director and editor, but if you don't have any actors, that's not going to be a particularly interesting show, right? So the players have a responsibility to kind of be participants in this world, to know about this world, to make this world come alive, to bring parts of it alive that maybe the GM isn't focusing on or highlighting, right? That's part of what their job is to like, hey, the things that you care about, like bring that alive. Bob, you care about the redemption of the demonic dwarves. Well, like that might be your arc. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to express that through playing action, right?
Yeah,
and so it's a great way to just really bring the group together.
Yeah, and we saw that. We've seen this several times. We definitely saw this in 13th Age, where a lot of times players end up taking ownership over certain elements of the game, right? I was the one who created the sea elves. You were, but I was the one who created the sea elves. I feel a certain kinship for them. I like their story. That's an element of the campaign I'm particularly interested in. And so maybe you make a character who's a sea elf, or maybe your character is a human who's obsessed with the legacy of the sea elves, or became a bard in honor of the power of the song that the sea elves used to sing, right, in the music of creation.
There's this other aspect I'm thinking of as you guys are talking too, as when you build this collaborative world, you guys are sort of doing this together versus I came to the table with my backstory.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's like, I selfishly want this to happen with no input from anybody else.
Right.
This is what happened in my past versus like we all figure out what happened in all of our past and how that affects the world, your character, my character, everything. Like there's a depth there that really is interesting.
The number one thing that I talk a lot about why backstories don't work is it was like, because nobody cares and nobody has any context.
Yeah.
But if we were to sit together for the better part of a day, you know, or 4 or 5 hours of session, maybe 2 sessions or whatever, and we create this really cool world, and we create a certain, you know, a group of people, right? They're like kind of like Vikings, right? But you know, they're like even more, you know, ferocious, and maybe they
Super Vikings.
Okay. When I write my backstory and I write how I was an orphan and I was raised by those people, that now means something to everybody.
To everybody.
Like, you might have made the Super Vikings, and I'm playing my own character, but I was like, oh no, Bob, my character was raised by the Super Vikings. And like, even though
I'm like, oh,
you, Bob, are excited, you know, your character
you're
may not
excited
even
about
care.
his character. You're like, wow, I am interested in your character. I am interested in your backstory.
That's what I'm saying.
You're like, because now you're thinking like, wow, what would that be like? Because I was putting myself into the mindset of those Super Vikings and you know, really going with it. And so it's a way, it creates such an important, and so that's why I think it's so important. That's why the why is so important.
That's
and
what I was thinking about.
This is why I think, well, maybe not, maybe this isn't why, but I think this is why so many players in the wider TTRPG space are really into or obsessed with, you know, learning the lore of Faerun, right? Or learning the lore of Golarion.
Yes.
Because what they want is for all of us to be on the same page.
Right.
You know what Shelly X is. You know what Shelly X is. I know what Shelly X is, right? You know what the Hell Knights are. You know what the Hell Knights are. I know what the Hell Knights are. And it's like, cool. We all have this commonality of, you know, of ground. But I think that's why people like that so much. And
I think it's why campaign settings are popular.
Right. I think that's why campaign. The problem is there's so much in a campaign setting that players will never read.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, it's, you know, you're still not as engaged and involved as when you were the ones who built it.
That's right.
Yeah. So,
but it's work, and not everyone's always going to be signed up for that, right? So, like all things, it's, you know, a tool. So use it or don't.
So let's talk Microscope. Let's talk how you play Microscope. Okay. So a game of Microscope works in 4 steps, and then you kind of just keep repeating until you're done. So step 1 is the big picture. Now, in the game, again, we're talking about the game of Microscope, but it's, of course, going to be very hard for us not to talk about how the TTRPG element of this comes in. Because remember, in a game of Microscope, you're all the same. You're all equal.
Right.
Maybe the person who's owns the game, is explaining the game, you know, they don't have any extra special power. But a GM might.
Okay.
Which isn't to say, and this is one area where you can adjust the slider as much or as little as you want. You could have a collaborative campaign collection where you're like, nope, I'm not the GM for this. Oh, everybody's input is just as valid as mine. Or you could say, you know, I'm going to have veto power.
Sure. Actually, I think Beowulf in chat was talking about veto power.
Yeah.
My one thought about that is I feel like it's kind of built in, right? Like the way I would express this is, Derek's going to go over the rules here in a second. There's this concept called a palette, and the palette's where you basically go what's in and what's out, right? Like this game must have space marines in it. It cannot have elves. Right.
Okay.
That's what a palette is, right? That's a great place for a GM to kind of set it up and then still allow freedom for people, right? But as Derek said too, I mean, if you're using this for building an RPG, like you know what you're about, you know who the GM is. There's nothing wrong by having a player there who's gonna, you know, kind of like arbitrate and be the final authority on it, because that could be useful to help build that collaborative experience.
And also, people sort of like when you give total freedom, it feels like they can't figure out a direction. When you have some guidelines or some a stick poking you in a little bit of the world building direction, people feel comfort in that, and they can explore space, I think, a little better.
So the first thing is the big picture, and this is basically just a overview, a brief synopsis of the history that you want to play. Or the campaign world that you're going to build.
Yeah, typically this is like a couple sentences, right?
Yeah, you want to. Now, this is something where you and your group are going to sit there and talk about, like, what do we want this game to be about?
Okay.
You know,
if your game was a book and you flipped it to the back, what would it say?
You know, on the back cover, like, what are the main themes of our game? You know, and what do we want this to be about? Because there's also a mistake when we talk about TTRPGs. We'll talk about scale. You don't have to build a campaign world and start with at the beginning of time.
I was actually thinking, and then the Big Bang happened.
And then the gods created the world, and then
we did, but you don't have to.
We did, but you don't have to, right? What I'm trying to say is, if you were trying to set an RPG if you were trying to set an RPG in
Do as I say, not as I do.
No, it's again, you got to do what's right for you.
Yeah.
If you were to set an RPG, say set in America, right, of the 21st century America, you don't have to start with the Big Bang. You don't have to start with the formation of the Earth. You don't have to start with humans that learned fire. You might start with 1776. The United States declares independence. That might be
a great example actually. Assuming this is a role playing game, you might have an alternative history, right? Think Man in a High Castle, right? American history. You start the timeline at Germany wins World War II.
right. That's the start of your timeline, right? Which is
and so now the previous history is implied, but this is the moment where like, oh, this is why this game is different.
I see what you're saying.
Right.
so you don't always have to have this, So
that's interesting.
So the big picture, like, again, that show Man in High Castle, the big picture might be like imagining what America would be like if Germany won World War II. That's going to be our campaign. That's going to be what our whole thing is about.
And also, independent of role playing games, that's just a great way to play Microscope.
Right, because that's the other thing. We are teaching you just how to play Microscope. That would be a fun way to play Microscope, is just to create this big idea, right? So this is where you talk. And again, this is where you're going to really be, I mean, from a fundamental level, maybe you don't even know what system you're going to play yet. You're like, I was thinking like star explorers in the far reaches of the universe. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're going to do Traveler, versus somebody saying like, I want to mirth and mayhem and kick ass throughout the halls of Dragonbane.
Actually, that's an important point. Well, one of the times when we use Microscope to make a game, we built the world before we chose the role-playing game.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What role-playing game did you end up with?
We went with Axe.
We went with Axe,
okay.
but we didn't start going, we're going to play Axe. What's the world look like? We like built the game or the world, and we're like, okay, what system would best
That's kind of cool.
fit into this?
Yeah.
That probably takes a level of RPG expertise
Sure.
to slide in, and a plethora of games to be able to.
It's the 201 course.
Yeah, but again, the idea here is you want to create a big picture and sort of talk about the idea of your world, and the idea of your campaign. And essentially you're saying like, hey, what is our campaign going to be about? And what do we really want to show throughout the course of this history? All right. So, and I should point out too that like there are books like the Microsoft Explorer and stuff that have like, tables and suggestions and alternate rules,
Some Oracle type stuff.
It's a bunch of Oracle tables. Actually, it's actually literally
Oracle expansion.
Oracle tables meaning random tables.
Yeah.
So then the next thing is when you're playing Microscope, you're going to be really dealing with two main things. And if you were using note cards, you would typically create some of them vertical and some of them horizontal. Okay. So a vertical card is called a period. Think of this as a, the
Age of Discovery.
the Age of Discovery, the Industrial Revolution. Big swaths of your history, right? That sort of represent,
but also a little abstract,
right?
It's not exactly 200 years, right?
Judgment Day.
Yeah, like so a period is really just described as a large chunk of your time, right? Decades or centuries, and then so those are written vertically.
Okay,
and then within and that's one of the things that you can add on your turn in Microscope.
Oh, you can add the age.
You can add a period.
So you only get one ad during your turn.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a little bit of a caveat to that, but yes.
Okay.
I believe you have the bookends where you start with a start and you have it end.
We're at the bookend. So the next, but again, we're not still into the part where it's like everybody else shuts up and it's your turn. This is still talking.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to bookend your history. You're going to decide what period do you start in, and most importantly, what period do you end in?
End in meaning the start of the next period?
No,
the end,
like the end of your timeline.
Like you're not going to talk about things in Microscope beyond that point.
Oh, you're still talking big picture.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for example, right, World War II ends to Germany wins, and the end of this period, and we don't know necessarily how long that is. It might be America invades Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. We're not going to talk about anything after that.
Got it.
Right. So again, the beginning of your period doesn't have to be the Big Bang, and the end of your period doesn't have to be the heat death of the universe.
Right.
So if you're playing a TTRPG, one of these is automatically taken care of, because the ending period is when your campaign starts.
Right.
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
So you are saying that last period is going to be the most recent section of history that your PCs are going to be, because you're going to be catching up to the present.
Right.
And then when at the end of your timeline that you create through this process while you're building a TTRPG world, at the end of that timeline, that's like day one of your campaign.
okay.
Right. So, you know, Game of Thrones, right? Bran builds the wall, right? The Hand of the King is assassinated, right? And because that's basically what Game of Thrones, as we know it, starts, right? That moment, everything over here is just building the world and filling the history. This is when the campaign starts. This is when the characters show up and the spotlight moves to them.
Yeah.
And then the campaign is about what happens next.
Right. And that's the key part. You're building the history and the players are all participating in it. And you're basically saying, like, you're showing how the kingdoms rose and fall and the wars collapsed. But there's still a lot of questions remaining. And then when the timeline ends, you're like, well, what's going to happen next? That's what we're going to play to find out, right? That's what we're going to go ahead and do. So when you're creating a bookend to your history, you again are going to start with 2 periods, which are those wide, spaces of time. And the GM can certainly sort of interject here. And again, I urge you to not automatically assume that the beginning of your timeline has to be the creation of the universe and the world. It might just be, we start with the founding of Rome. We start with, that's where our campaign starts. We start in the age of legends. Yeah, Bob.
So let's say you did that, right? The Germany invades, or the Germany wins the war, and then whatever. But you said you can go backwards in time. Can you go backwards before the period starts?
No. What Derek's saying is between the start and end, time is not linear.
Got it.
We don't know how long it is.
Right. But you're in between those stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
An example of this, right? So we go, Germany wins the war, and the end is America invades Germany. Okay. I might go, all right, I'm going to have a period here called the American Rebellion. Right. And this period I'm going to put near the end for now. And in that, I'm going to have some stuff like a rebel president is elected. Right. And then you might go, okay, well, I'm going to go back over here to Americans become sympathetic to Nazi ideals. And I'm going to have a whole civil revolution occur over here where, like, the American culture kind of like, mingles with Nazi Germany, right?
We're really leaning hard into it. You watched Man in High Castle.
I didn't mean to, but I mean, it illustrates that this isn't just like
the reason I brought it up was because, like, a lot of people in their TTRPG worlds, at least I think they do, is gods. Like, so it's like, okay, well, how did these gods start or form powers or magic? And it's like, if you don't start at the beginning,
right?
How do you get?
And I will say, for a fantasy role-playing game, you're probably going to start at the beginning and do some broad strokes.
I mean, yeah. Okay. And I don't think it's
I was just asking.
I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, and you could certainly do it. But I will say that, and again, we're prone to do that. But I will say that it's not required.
It's not,
and you should not feel like that you would need to do it.
We have Michael L in chat asking, like, how does this work with predetermined worlds? And the Nazi Germany is a good example of this, right? If you were trying to do Microscope and Glorian, you would start at the point of change that your game is going to make, right? So everything before that would be history as written in Glorian, and whatever happens after that moment to the end of your bookend would be what you guys are changing, what you're building, right?
Yeah. I mean, I will say that, to your point, Michael, about pre-established and written rules and rule sets. And Scott, I did see your tip. I'm going to get to that in a second, but that is one of the downsides of that style of play. They have done a lot of the heavy lifting for you. They've put in all that work, but you lose a little bit of that flexibility. Whereas when you do this process ahead of time, and you sort of play in a low prep way, or you already know what the storyline beats are because you were there when they were creating it, you can make things more tied in. So I think when you do this process with the modules, it's a little tough. My recommendation, specific to his point, is, and we've talked about these on the stream before, but I have talked about the backstory cards from Galileo games, right? And we use those in Root.
Yep.
And what that does with the backstory cards is, as the GM, not as a collaborative group, as the GM, the backstory grid has 3 people, 3 places, 3 events,
Yeah.
maybe 3 something else. And then you go around the table and everybody's drawing cards that'll be like how they're connected to each other
Right.
and to those events, those people, those places. As a GM, what you want to do is read your adventure path, read your module, and take critical locations, critical NPCs,
Use that as
critical
your
ideas,
seeds for the
and
cards.
put those.
So you're
into that-
recommending don't use
I don't think-
Microscope for that type of thing.
I don't think you should use
more
Microscope.
backstory.
I think you should use the Galileo
backstory
backstory because that way what you do is you go, look, I know that this person and this place are going to be important. So what I'd rather do is put those into the grid and then play a couple rounds of backstory cards, and the PCs will build connections with those NPCs and with those locations and with those special events. And then when that happens in the adventure path, which I know they are going to do because it's an adventure path and it's fairly linear, the players will go, oh, cool, I actually feel somewhat connected to this, and I actually am invested.
Yeah, that's great advice. Microscope, just to be clear, is much more aligned for like true homebrew.
Yeah, making your own world.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Scott, you want to get Scott P's?
Oh, Scott P. Yes. Scott P. says, have you looked at the Unbound RPG by Rowan, Rook, and Deckard? It has an interesting collaborative world and campaign creation system using randomly generated touchstones. I have not. I am familiar with Beak, Bone, and Feather from them. I think it's from them. But I do not know the Unbound RPG, Scott. So very cool. Yeah, we'll definitely need to take a look at that.
Ben mentioned Beak, Bone, and Feather in the chat earlier.
Yeah. I think Ben just picked up Beak, Bone, and Feather at PAX, but I picked it up last year, I think, at Origins. So back to bookending your history. So again, the idea here is you want to start with, the end of your history timeline is basically the period of time where the campaign is going to start. If you're playing normal Microscope, you can make it whatever you want it to make it. And the beginning is up to you and your group. Okay. So the other thing that you want to start doing, and this is an area that for Microscope, fine, but for TTRPGs, Aaron and I change it a little bit, is anytime you add something to the game, basically anytime you add a note card to the game, whether it's a period or an event, you want to describe whether it is light tone or dark tone. Basically, is this a positive thing or a negative thing?
To the world.
Just to the
timeline.
To the timeline, to the tone. Is this a growing, building, healing moment, or is this a breaking down, destruction moment? One thing that Aaron and I do is we play around with this idea a little bit, and we don't just use light or dark.
Okay.
We kind of decide, what is our campaign about?
What's the tension point?
What is our campaign about in terms of like Avatar? Remember how Avatar has the principles? You're torn between duty and freedom.
Yep.
So maybe our campaign is about duty versus freedom. And so we want the events and the history that we're talking about to be these moments where was someone doing their duty or was someone doing their own thing? So you can kind of like guide the tone of your campaign. So for example, in the one example that we'll show you, Aaron and I were going for more of an old school, Elric, law versus chaos.
Right.
So we didn't do dark or light. We did order and chaos. Right? Very like primal forces of the universe. Now you might say that's fairly similar to light and dark. It is. But the idea is that like chaos meant more than just, good or bad.
It had interesting moments where you would have things like these clearly evil dark knights that were propelling order.
Think like the White Cloaks from Wheel of Time. They would have been order.
Yep.
Right? Not dark.
Yep.
Right? They're not chaos. Right? So like that, that's a great example, and we actually had, I think they were called Knights of Shadow and Knights of Flame.
Yeah.
I think
and they're pretty, they're definitely dark.
They were definitely dark. So
they used their own souls as like a matrix from like Earthdawn.
Yeah, that's where the Earthdawn comes in.
Yeah.
So you can see here in this example from them, they're playing a game where the concept is mankind leaves the sick Earth behind and spreads out into the stars. We decide to have our light and dark. So that's their theme of this Microscope game. Mankind leaves the sick Earth behind and spreads out to the stars. Basically, Interstellar. Right? That's the premise of Interstellar.
Or Wall-E.
And then the start period is Earth is in sad shape, but mankind unites to face the challenge and make a new life among the stars. It's not easy, but it's a time of hope and unity. And they call this a light period. The end period is dark. Humanity is scattered across a myriad of star systems with no central connection or core identity. Isolated and alone, humanity fades into stagnation.
So that's their start and their bookend?
That's the
Their
start and the
bookends.
end.
But you don't have to do light to dark or dark
Nope.
to light.
You can do
right?
light to light. You can do dark to
Okay.
dark.
Right.
It
You
doesn't.
do dark.
But
The grim dark
point
future
is,
is only war.
If we were to play, so humanity is scattered across a myriad of star systems with no central connection or core identity. Isolated alone, humanity fades into stagnation. That could be 440K. But the point is if you were using this for an RPG, it's at that point where your campaign would begin.
Yeah.
And when your campaign started, the worlds would be far apart. No one has communication. Traveling amongst the black is considered dangerous, right? The warp storms can, take people off course for millennia, or they come back completely changed, right? So we've created this sort of expectation that our campaign is going to start off on sort of a dark note.
And what's great about this is we've talked about 3 little things so far, and already this imaginary example has so much life in us, right? We can't help it. We're already thinking about the Space Marines and the scattered planets and dying stars, all that, right? And that's why this is so great. Is it really propels that imagination forward and gets you invested in right from the start.
So this would be like what it would look like. Mankind makes new life among the stars. That's our start. And humanity stagnates, isolated alone. At this point, we can add anything we want between these two things. But we can't add anything to the left or anything to the right. That is where our timeline ends.
Got it.
Okay? So the next step, part 3, is the palette, which Aaron alluded to earlier. This is so important because not only, this is like lines and veils, which a lot of people know about. But it actually is going a step beyond that. I think that you should still do, if you're playing with people you don't know, you should still do a different thing where we say, hey, there's someone who made it, I can't remember. It's free. You can find it. It's like a checklist where it's like, how do you feel about these things? Child murder,
What's basically your ex.
what are the things that you want to run off? This is different. This is not for that. You should do that process, but that's not what this is for. This is for adding or banning, what I will say, elements that are fairly standard to the genre that you do want or you don't want in your game. And the way this works is you go around and everybody can add something. They can add something to the yes or they can add something to the no. Then, if everybody adds something, you go around again. And then if everybody adds something, you go around again. But if one person passes, then everybody else gets one more round. And that way, no person will ever have added more than one more than anybody else. Now, you might go around the table 4 or 5 times, and you might end up with 20 things on your palette.
We built quite a list.
Okay. Or everybody could be good after 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. Okay.
Now, an important thing with this is it ties into role-playing games, because so far we've just talked about history and very narrative stuff.
Isaiah,
right?
yes, exactly. Fuck gnomes, they suck. I don't want them in the game.
Yes. And that's actually kind of like bridging what I'm about to say here. We would use the palette not just for the fiction, but also for things like mechanics and game style, right? So, we might go, and I believe this is actually something that happened, right? Tim was like, I want trolls in the game. Okay. Obviously, trolls have mechanics, but that's more of like a narrative fluff thing, right? But then Tim also would go, I don't want to do serious inventory management.
I don't want to track encumbrance.
Yeah.
Tim put that in the palette. No.
Right.
He's like, I don't, because remember, we hadn't even decided a system yet.
So you can't, but that's the truth then, right?
That is the truth.
No.
Because then I can't go, yes, I do want management.
Correct. Well,
Correct.
At this point, we are still having discussions.
Okay.
But if we talk about it and, Tim says, I don't want this to have any dragons.
Yeah.
Right. And everyone's like, yeah, that's fine. Dragons have been done to death. Dragon Bane, Dungeons and Dragons, Dragon this, Dragon Age. And so we say no dragons. That means that when we're playing the game and it's your turn and no one else we can't say shit. You can't be like, and then the dragons attack. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You are violating the
Correct.
rule.
But
of the
in
palette.
in the palette thing,
Yeah.
he goes, I don't want to track resources. And I go, I want to track resources.
Right. And that point,
That's
you have
a
to-
conversation.
That's a conversation.
Got it.
And that's
But
where a GM can have a little bit of a sort of a referee aspect. If you're playing Microscope full out, it is just a conversation.
Okay.
Because what you're really doing is setting the tone. So, as an example, so I will show you this.
What is this amazing contraption you're pulling up right now?
So this is a Trello board
Whoa!
that we used for the one of the campaign microscopes that we've been talking about. We did this online and we did this asynchronously. All right, which is to say that basically it was like, hey,
it's your turn.
I had a mind. It's your turn. Ping somebody,
Yep.
get them in Discord or whatever, and and then it's their turn. You wait.
This took about a month.
I was gonna say, how long did this
build,
take?
but it wasn't like active, right?
Right. It took about a month. But
I'd get a ping, and like after work, and I'd go in and I'd write something, and I'd ping Tim, right? And then Tim would ping Derek or George.
and this is really important because remember, when we were building this, we didn't know what game system we were going to play. So if our palette, had been like, we want kick-ass action scenes. I want characters to feel like superheroes and gods.
Right.
It's like, well, we probably would have gone with like 4th edition D&D.
Right.
Pathfinder 2 didn't exist back then, but something like that. But instead, if you look at what we as a group said, Tim wanted trolls. Now, what does that mean? Well, to be very clear, adding something to the yes column if you think the other players would not expect it to be in the history, but you want to be able to include it. And what Tim was really saying is, I want trolls to be like the way orcs are in Lord of the Rings.
Very
very common.
Like Trollocs from Wheel of Time. I want them to be like this,
they're a force or
fairly
something.
common force.
If
right?
trolls are in a yes in your palette, they're going to come up a lot in your
Yeah,
team.
They're going to be a big part of your
It's not
campaign.
this rare thing that shows up once.
Similarly, you do not have to put everything into no. You want to only add something to no if you think the other players would expect it to be something that they could choose.
Which you said dragons.
Like we're playing a fantasy
We're
RPG.
playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons
and
Dungeons and Demons.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
no dungeons, just dragons, right? So, and so the idea here again is that we are deciding what we want. So this one specifically said Tim. I don't know who said all of these things, but Tim wanted trolls.
Okay.
They should tell you who the card's created by.
Yeah, I'm not going to click on it though. Depleted resources. Well, my guess is that someone else built this because it says Tim says. So fine. Okay, so there you
George
go.
did?
Yeah, George did. Our buddy George. George added.
There he is. That's my wording.
Depleted resources. So you're already imagining a world where things are on the down slope.
Must construct additional pylons.
That's right.
From Aaron, Mr. Smith, we have gold/currency/treasure is important to characters and players.
Okay.
So this is good, right? Because that's a mechanic thing. And what does that mean? It means something like 13th Age isn't going to work so well here.
Right, because
Okay.
13th Age doesn't really have like gold and magic items and treasure in that way. I mean, it does, but not like that.
Not like that.
But you also couldn't do like PF2 raw where it's like gold doesn't matter after 10th level because it's just ridiculous.
I was a little bit less bitter back then, and PF2 hadn't come out yet. I would say,
but I'm
joking
thinking of
aside,
a system like
PF2 economy obviously matters.
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Ancient lost ruins, followers, henchmen, supporting troops, caravans and expeditions, a sword and sorcery feel, meaningful camps and bases. For anybody who's played Mouse Guard,
Yes.
winter phase.
Yes.
I'm going to guess that this was added by
It
Mr.
has to
Smith.
be beer, yeah.
Yes, it's by you.
You got a whole deep thing.
Well,
in
right, and
there.
we're adding this. Look at this. In contrast to what we just said, yes to dragons.
Right. Yeah.
Now, of course,
That means dragons are prominent.
we knew we were playing a fantasy RPG. So, of course, dragons you expect to be them. But by putting it on the yes, we were basically saying, I want to see this. I want this to be a part of the campaign.
So-
And this is important because you're going to see when we move into like the actual periods, you're going to see us referencing these concepts.
So if you remember when we did one of those campaign worlds that you did, and you asked me for my background, and I said, like, I want to be looking for the Sky Keepers.
Right.
Would I do something like that in there? Or is Sky Keepers more what I'd put on the board?
no, because that is about your character.
Correct.
So, for example,
But are the Sky Keepers in the world I put yes, or do I put this on the board?
well,
if there was
because
something...
you wouldn't know what the Sky Keepers are.
Right.
That's something that gets made up in the course of it. But like
You would go, I'm trying to remember what the Sky Keepers were. They were dragons. You would go,
Well, there was a few
I want
different
like
things.
dragon deities in this world.
right,
Okay.
like,
or associated with the elements
and
or something.
this is also
Yeah,
where
yeah.
this is also where things, because you're building it yourself. If we were to do that in your example, what would end up happening is we would be like, no, I want a world that's like dragon gods. That like,
Yeah.
you're like, okay, yeah, they came in, they killed the other gods. And now everyone worships different dragon gods. And there's like there's the black, the white, the red, the green, the blue. And each one is sort of like, the religious sort of forces, and everybody worships these dragon gods.
Everyone has like a color,
you know, and it kind of like, you know, it's like, and they each give each person a type of mana, you know, a type of magic.
I was thinking Raya the Last Dragon. Or whatever
this
it
is
was.
already cool. This is cooler than some campaigns. I want to play this campaign of dragon gods.
Yeah. So the idea is like,
sold.
This is the bad thing. You're gonna get super inspired by all these different ideas. You're like, I want to play all of it, and then you know.
So you know, abstract, descriptive combat, semi-cursed items, death spiral. Notice this is in the yes column.
I got to yes. I thought we kicked that out.
Nope. Oh, let's see who added it.
That has to be me.
Yep.
Yep.
Non-critical adventures, morale, large numbers of enemies, having a log that you know, right, recording with thing, PC goals, art advancement. All right, so what about in the no column? We wrote no easy teleportation magic. So, you know, when you think about PF2, you think about your
teleport.
uncommons. No teleport. No, this is all no stuff.
Oh, that's a phenomenal point, actually. We should talk about that, right? Because we have a lot of PF2 fans here. Your palette is a great way to adjust the rarities in your game, right?
That's a good point.
Pathfinder 2, rarities don't mean more powerful, right? It just means how common is it?
And it also states that, like, look, this is pushing the limit of what most people would consider standard fantasy.
Sure.
Like androids and, you know, Kanrasu or whatever.
But using something like this, you can flip that where now androids are common, but maybe elves are not because, I don't know, in the future, elves got taken out, right? And so you can
elves
use
all died,
yeah.
but before they died, they built a race of automatons.
Right, they put their souls in
and they
it.
put their immortal souls into them.
Yeah, see?
That sounds familiar.
Right. So like, you know, that's a PF2 actually is really set up well with the rarity system to do things like this.
I agree. And you can see here, magic trivializing resource management. So no magic food creation, no bags of holding, right? We wanted we didn't want just people to hand wave that stuff. No extreme weather. Some of this is based off of the way that previous campaigns had gone.
Tim was definitely trying to keep me in check here.
Tim was definitely traumatized.
I feel like the no's are definitely like the party like
No, no, look,
It was a
like-
race
but-
to how many
but-
yeses I could get before how many no's they could get.
Right, but also, yeah, I'll be honest with you. I think Aaron put a lot of yeses in, and the no's were things like no to constant existential threats. But notice, look at this: no mega dungeons.
Oh,
right?
interesting.
Because the group was like, you know what? We don't want to just do the campaign where we go into one adventure or one dungeon.
We wanna
and
see
we're-
the world.
and we're there for 20 levels. We want to, you know, we want more short and be able to travel around and see things. So we, as a group, built this palette. And that is what enabled us to decide what we wanted to be in. And you can see that some of it was mechanics, but some of it was also things like, you know, the dragons.
and the yeses and nos don't have to be equal.
Nope.
You
And again,
just
the
put
way
one in during your
the
turn.
way it officially works is you do it, you go around in a circle, everybody gets one turn, and if everybody added something, you do it again, you go around. But the moment one player doesn't add something, right, you get one more round and then you're done. And again, feel free to discuss and negotiate. No one should be unhappy about what ends up added or banned to the palette. Okay.
Yeah, this is an excuse to be a dick. So
Correct. I mean, there's still very much a part here about being a thing. Now, again, this is where it says the palette is not an exhaustive list of what will be in your history. It's a list of exceptions. If something fits the setting, like wizards in a fantasy world, you probably don't need to add it to the yes column.
you would note we didn't add or exclude wizards, but this campaign had a ton of magic in it.
Correct. So, and this is important. The palette is your last chance to freely negotiate and build group consensus. That was the word that you would use. That was good. About your history. Your choices tell the other players what kind of game you want to play, helping you avoid bad surprises and misunderstandings later on. Now, keep in mind, Microscope, he's writing this. Ben is writing this, assuming you're sitting down to play a game for 3 or 4 hours with nothing afterwards. You're just sitting down to do this. But these words ring way more true when you think about the fact that you're now going to use this to go play a 20, 30, 40, 50 session.
This is going to be the next 2 years of my life.
Right,
So.
this could be the next. Right, this could be easily. So your choices tell the other players what kind of game you want to play, helping you avoid bad surprises and misunderstandings later on. If there's a big agreement about the kind of things you want in your history, now's the time to talk about it and find this out.
And this is brilliant because what this is really talking about is this is a super session zero. You are building the expectations of the tone in the campaign that you're about to play for the next year or two, right? If you're playing like a full-on campaign. And that's awesome because this is a great opportunity for everyone to get something that they're super excited about and make sure it's something that like they can't stand, like squared away, right? And when you do that and you agree to that, there's just this natural enthusiasm and excitement because you're like, okay, I know this is going to be good because I got to interject into the DM secret soup my own ingredients. You know, I don't have to like wait for Derek to like, I don't know, give me what I want or like dick me over.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, but it's kind of cool because of the way the cameras are set up. Like,
Oh yeah.
because Aaron just reached into my.
I think we did on purpose. We flipped one of them.
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah. So now group decisions are over. Now, again, this is if you're playing full Microscope. At this point, everybody makes their decisions individually, right? You no longer build consensus. You get to just do your own thing. The time for discussion and saying, I don't want this or I do want this is over.
Got it.
If you come up with a great idea, but it's not really on the palette, and save it for the next campaign or save it for your own campaign or save it for the next game. That being said, again, if you're using this for TTRPGs, you know, the GM can exercise a little bit more authority and a little bit more, control.
And we've talked about multiple times. That's like a lever and a range, right? How much should a GM be involved in that? You know, my advice is like, let this experience play out, but come in and step in if you really feel like the campaign's
my general
not doing
advice
well.
is hang on loosely.
Yes, hang on loosely.
Don't drop the reins, but don't try to control it. Like, enjoy it, right? Play to find out.
But understand what we're talking about here. People are going to introduce things that you may not have thought of. And that's why this is fun. Now, some of those ideas are going to clash and it's not going to work out. And this is what the palette for, or as a last measure, the GM, right? But let yourself kind of explore where it goes. Hey, maybe these plague dragons could be interesting after all, right? You know,
Spoiler:
like,
they were not.
they were not.
So
we ran through it though. We tried it.
I embraced it. So at this point, we are now going to go around the table, and on your turn, you are either going to add a new period, okay, between two periods, and again, that's usually represented by a vertical note card, which is a span of time. You know, like if you were to call it an era, you know, you'd be like the Napoleonic era, the Victorian era, you know, the rise of the Roman Empire, the fall of the Roman Empire, right? It's a period of time. So ergo period. And again, you're going to want to write on it, what kind of tone is it? Light or dark? Or maybe in your campaign, you're using other decisions or traits like order and chaos or...
great one, like 4th edition, right? Primordials or divine, right? Like nature, elemental, or
nature or nurture,
divine.
You know, whatever your campaign is sort of about.
Life, death.
Now, the other thing that you can add is an event. And an event is usually written on a horizontal index card. And you're going to put these, because again, it's non-linear. So when you do it on Trello, it's really nice because it's all digital and you can move it around. But when you're doing it in person, and I have played these on person, you push the note cards around. If you have two cards that are next to one another and somebody wants to put a new period in between the two of them, you just push them aside and add in a card. But periods aren't history. You know, they're spans of history. So events are specific things that happen. So for example, in the history of Lord of the Rings, there might be a period called the War of the Ring.
Right.
Which is basically the entire history of the entire period of time of like the three movies.
Right.
So that's the period, the War of the Ring. Underneath it, you would have,
Okay, so
the Fellowship arrives at Rivendell.
So the period goes vertical, and then under it,
and
horizontal.
And going in time order.
Got
so
it.
whatever's at the top of the stack came first. Whatever's at the bottom of the bottom of that is, the ring is thrown into the fire and Sauron is destroyed. Right. At the top, you might have the ring is discovered in the Shire. And, and then it's like another one's like Battle of Helm's Deep. And then somebody does. The first thing that someone could add to that is the ring is destroyed and thrown into the fire. That's how that was the first thing that was put down.
Right.
Because you can work anywhere in time.
That's right. Yeah,
in fact, one of my favorite things is, let's say that there's no city. There's no big city in our campaign world. The first thing I put down is Atlantis is destroyed.
We don't even know what that means.
Atlantis hasn't even been created yet. But I know it gets destroyed right here in this timeline. So we might fill it in
Creates
later.
lots of whys.
And then it kind of begs the question to other players or to yourself about why is that important? And
Or I guess the other question is, if no one ever goes back to touch that, then I guess it's not important.
in a certain way, it's not, but we'll get to why you can kind of control that.
Okay.
Okay. So again, periods and events. And you write each one on an index card, and you just go around the table and do this. All right. And, here again, you can see an example, so they started with mankind makes a new life among the stars. They end with humanity isolated and alone. But then they have a period here. The mass settlement of an alien Dyson sphere. That's a period. But here's the events. The survey ship Meadowlark discovers the sphere. Solar flares destroy human settlements.
And in this example, the open circle is light, and then the
and the shaded circle is dark. So obviously, when they discover the sphere, great, that's a light. When the solar flares destroy everyone, that's dark. But you might have put solar flares destroy human settlements first,
Right.
And then someone came in later and added that someone actually discovered the sphere. But this is the first important step, which is do not be afraid to use proper nouns for things. Okay? Because there's a tendency for people to get lazy, and you create, the great port city is founded. Give it a name. Call it Waterdeep. Call it Baldur's Gate. Give it a name. And one of the things that we did is we sort of kept a master list of like all the important people, places, events, things.
Every proper noun.
Every proper noun.
To be fair, it was a little excessive, but it was a very useful tool for a game master.
Right, because you want to give these things context, because otherwise people are just going to forget what it is, and it's just it's that guy. No, give him a name. And it doesn't have to be a tongue twister or horrible. In fact, I've always said this. I'm a big fan of giving things simple names. I would much rather people create the Knights of the Blood Throne than the Knights of Ul-Gul-Katak. Because Ul-Gul-Katak, people will be like, the Knights of Doo-Doo-Doo-Cock. Like, no one's going to... No, but if you call them the Knights of the Blood Throne, it's very, I love to do like adjective noun. I mean, it's
basically classic fantasy.
It's classic fantasy, but it's simple, Organization of adjective noun. And I think that just builds people's confidence with it. But use this as an opportunity to create the elements that you want to sort of go into. Now, this could be a little unstructured. And that is why there is the idea of the focus. Okay?
Okay.
So one person, it could be the GM, starts the game. They're the first person to go in a round, and they are the focus.
Yeah, so that's important. There are rounds, and there are turns within a round.
So
you don't have to roll for initiative, though.
Okay.
Unless you really want to.
So if I'm the first person to go in that round, which is basically once everybody's gone once, that's the round.
Okay.
But if I'm the first person to go for that round, I am the focus. And that means two things. Number one, I am the first person to add something this round, but I'm also the last person.
So then I'm the focus the next round.
And then you're the focus the next round.
I see where that was going.
Okay. And then you'll get to add 1 and 2. And then Smith would be the focus. But here's the other thing. The focus picks for that round what's called the lens, as in a magnifying lens. Right. As in, we're going to take
something you might see in a microscope.
We are going to take a closer look at this theme. You have to, this round, tie whatever event or period you are creating back to the focus back to the lens that the focus chose. So to your point,
so you can't jump around too much, because we talk about like jumping in different periods.
Well, no,
you can if you can connect it.
Like,
got it.
If you can, it's a challenge to you. So for example, if
you can't just go off on your own.
If I say, I know that there's this card on the table that says Atlantis is destroyed, and I say, hey, I'm the focus this round. The lens is going to be on Atlantis. So I'm not saying what you can and can't add. Right. What I'm saying is that this round, it has to tie to or tie into Atlantis, or it has to tie into the Great Unification Wars, or it has to tie into the conflict between orcs and elves. Yeah. And someone might add something about the last war that happened between orcs and elves. Another person might add something from the beginning of the timeline about the very first time that orcs and elves clashed. But the point is, the direction this round is guided by the lens. Okay. And so that's a great way that you can sort of, as a player, shape the round. And then it goes to the next person, and they get to shape the round, and so on and so forth. So in this way, it provides a little bit more context. Additionally, and I think this is I think really cool. At the end of that round, okay, do we have it here? Legacy. Here we go. This happens technically at the end. After that round is over, the player to the lens is right, the focus is right, looks back what happened during that round and picks something to be a legacy.
So you started, I went, or so you started, you went, I went, Smith goes, you go to end the round.
Correct. Right.
Now Smith is going to now look at something to become a legacy.
Yeah, and he's going to look and find something that appeared in play this round for either the first time or reappearing from far earlier in the game, okay? You're not making something new, you're just singling something out in your history. Okay? Basically, it's a way to say, I want to tag this as something that we can go back to.
Okay.
It's an idea that I want to explore. And then so you add it.
You have to?
Yes.
Oh, you have to. You can't just go, I don't really like any of this stuff.
Correct. You have to add one. And then it gets added to a list that's called the legacy list. And then the legacy can add an additional event themselves to anything that is either the legacy they just created or any previous legacy. Okay?
He gets to do that?
He gets to do that.
Okay.
Okay, so what does this do? What it means is there's going to be one thing each round that is sort of earmarked as being important to your campaign. And no matter what the focus is, at the end of that round, one player is going to be able to look back on your list of legacies of like 5 or 6 things and say, I'm going to add another event tied to that. And then, we're going to go talk about the Dragon Wars.
So first he picks something that just happened as a legacy.
Correct.
Then he goes back to the list of legacies and then adds an event to one of those. And it could be the one we just
created, but it also could be one that you had created. Or he had created 3 turns ago.
Okay.
But the point is that gives you ability to go outside of the focus. Because other than that, in the focus round, you were only talking about that specific thing that you were focused on. The legacy sort of are the big themes. The big, so if one of our legacies is orcs versus elves,
right,
or orcs versus humans, we'll make it Azeroth, we'll make it Warcraft 2, we'll make it World of Warcraft. If one of the themes, legacies of your campaign early on is orcs versus humans, then no matter what we're talking about, we're talking about Deathclaw breaking forward or Deathwing breaking forward and causing a cataclysm. Yeah, but as a legacy, I'm going to pick that orcs and humans, and I'm going to add an event about orcs and humans. And so what ends up happening by the end of your timeline, those legacy ideas or focus have a lot more cards about them because people are able to keep going back to them. By the way, you could totally, when it's your turn, if the focus is on that, you can add to it. That's totally fine. Yeah. But the legacy kind of allows you to skip, shortcut the whole, you have to worry about what the focus and the lens is on this turn.
And this is another way, tying it back to the role-playing games, like your legacy is going to become like these major like points and foundations in your campaign, right? If Orcs and Humans is a legacy, Orcs versus Humans is going to pop up a lot in the actual campaign.
So let's take a look at our Trello board that we use, because we did this online and we didn't have note cards. And we start with the main concept. Now, again, we were constructing a sort of very high, this is the Silmarillion.
Yes.
Right. This is a very high concept idea. So
as much as we were using this to build our campaign, we also just really enjoyed doing this.
Right.
So we got really into it. This is not an example of what you need to build.
You could do it.
And
it would be awesome.
And it's awesome. But don't feel like this is like the benchmark, right? This is just us being over the top.
All right. So the main concept of our game that we decided to do is, in the twilight years of the universe, the song of dark and light begins its final verse. So our idea was this like big, huge, epic, struggle between the forces of light and the forces of dark. Very, Lord of the Rings, very Elric, very like the dark is rising, right? Very like big, ideas of concepts.
And like even with the Lord of the Rings idea, right? Even that line about the song and the verse, right? It also alludes to like music being something that's like more important than like, what it is in reality, right? Which is like a big Lord of the Rings thing, right? Like the universe is like created through music.
So here we have our periods, right? These are the eras of time, right? So our first period, which you see says start, because this was when we created our bookends. This is where, so for example, we did not start with the creation of the planet. We did not start with the creation of space and time.
Yeah.
Our history starts with the discovery of magic.
Oh, yeah, this is actually kind of post-apocalyptic, if I recall.
Right. So this is we don't know what happened in our history before this, all we know is that our current history starts with the discovery of magic. And you'll notice that we have these little tags here, these golden colors or these silver
After you
colors.
click on those, they should expand.
And so this is order, right? So our game, instead of being light and dark, was about order or chaos. Okay, so this was the start of our turn, or the start of our period, a period of wonder and growth as the civilized races discover the power of magic. With its aid, the savage monsters and inhumans of the world are beaten back and allow kingdoms and empires to thrive. So the idea is that like it was a primitive state, right? Humans were maybe hunted and, very like there were no towns, there were no cities. People lived in huddled villages, but somehow somebody discovered magic. And that allowed, that was like us discovering fire, or us discovering gunpowder. It was like a moment that allowed everybody to turn around. So that was where we started. And we end
there you go.
At the fall of Castulian.
Which, when we wrote that,
no
idea what that meant.
No one knows what that meant. Fall of Castulian. All right, but we understood there was an idea of it being like a Rome-like concept. Okay, and again, this is chaos, beset by foes at its borders. The once mighty, spelled correct, the once mighty human empire of Castulian crumbles as savage inhuman invaders rampage and pillage across the land. And that means that this is the period where our campaign is going to start.
Okay.
And it's important when you're using this to build a campaign. Remember, we're going to be talking about PBTA principles throughout all this. Leave blanks. This is the other one where it's like, fill your characters' lives with adventure. You don't want an ending that's necessarily like
everything
everything's
is great. There's no strife. Right. Everyone is wealthy. Everyone has universal basic income and Medicare for all.
Utopia.
It's a utopia.
You can do that, but chances are you want something that's going to be like, hey, what are our heroes going to do, right? This from the very beginning, even before we get into the cards, this sets it up like, well, whatever our characters are going to do, they're going to be busy because life is not awesome right now.
Right.
And that's good. It's exciting. It's adventurous.
And
right?
that is where this timeline started. Now, I don't know the exact order by which these things are added, but keep in mind, we may have been jumping around, right? The next thing that might have been added.
We did not go in order.
Was this. And then someone went back and added something else. So you can see that, the periods in this campaign were the discovery of magic, then the age of legends, Bob.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even try.
Man marvels at itself as technology and magic reach an apex, creating a utopian civilization.
I feel like I've read that somewhere.
Okay. Then there was the War of Dragons, the Dragon Lord versus the Dragon Masters of Castul, chromatics versus metallics.
Oh.
Then there was the Wars of Independence. Then the Scepter of Dawn disappears. This is like a period of time.
Oh.
Okay. Then the Sundering.
What's the Scepter of Dawn?
We didn't know.
We didn't know at the time. Then the Sundering. Then the Long Dark.
Don't know what was getting sundered.
Then the Return. Then the Unification Wars. Then Pax Costilian, which is basically means like Pax Romana, like the period of peace that came with the growth of Rome. But then followed by the fall of Costilian. So
didn't last.
So these are our periods that were added by all the different players over the course of the different game. Within each period, okay, so if we take a look all the way back here to the discovery of magic, you can see that there are events. These are specific moments. This isn't something that, it doesn't necessarily have to take place in a day, but it's like a very specific moment in time.
This battle,
this discovery, this big event, this big discovery. You'll notice too that we start trying to use proper nouns. So for example, we say, oh my God.
We are so zoomed in.
So you can see here, it says like, the Conclave of Castul deciphers the text of the Arduin Grimoire. Now, Arduin Grimoire is actually like a really old like Judges Guild product from the 1970s, okay? So I just added that one because why not? Ancient text that leads to the discovery of the language of the universe, aka magic. Sort of a dictionary or Rosetta Stone. What become known as spells are simply sentences or phrases created through combining the translated words of power from the grimoire.
So the grimoire gets discovered. This kind of started the magic.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Because that's the start of this period.
Okay.
Okay.
That was the event within the period
So-
where magic was literally discovered.
But that also says sort of that there was magic before, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Now we don't know because it's not, and we're not going to talk about it in our
Yeah.
timeline. But that might be something that that the players figure out or do something with. Because the idea is, they found this book.
That's a blank.
That book was already written. Who wrote it? We don't know. We won't answer it in this timeline because it's before the start. Okay. But after so the Conclave of Castul deciphers the text of the Arduin Grimoire, and then Beliad, the High Archmage of Castul, becomes the first Dragon Master. So at some point between these group of
dragons
people,
are important,
right? Because dragons are important. At some point between the discovery of the Arduin Grimoire, someone became, a dragon master. The painstaking result of a lifetime's work of translation, Beliad masters the invocation of domination. Applying the results to the savage and wild dragons of Castul, he becomes the most powerful mortal on the continent.
Now, if you look right above that, this is how we use Trello. You could see where we talk about the source and the focus, right? So this round, whenever we did it, whoever started it, they chose to focus.
Remember how we talked about the focus?
Yep.
So the focus this round was dragons, which meant everybody had to add stuff related to dragons. This was mine that I added.
So when we built this, we made sure to link everything so we could basically show like why this mattered and how it's connected to everything.
So again, you've got somebody who gains magic and now basically can enslave the dragons, right? And then Elven.
These all look like they're added by you, Derek.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing. This would have happened much later in the game.
Yeah.
Elven assassins slay Beliad.
Oh.
Beliad is slain inside the very walls of Castul as a band of elven extremists who call themselves the Bright Hand, infiltrate the keep's defenses, and murders him and his primary advisors. I don't know why. I don't know how, but that is what happened.
Now, go back to that.
Which one?
The one you just had.
Yeah.
This one didn't have a focus. Was this some kind of legacy?
It's possible.
Or did you just miss it?
We might have just missed it.
Yeah, okay. I just want to know, like, for what I'm looking at.
Bob.
Yeah. I'm just trying to double check here. I've only used Trello once, and it was for Northern Reaches tracking system.
So
at this point in my life, I was using Trello for everything. I used Trello to plan my marriage. So,
and so now I'm not going to go through every single one of these things with you guys, but
there's some good ones in there where you get into the scenes, but
because even in the book they don't explain them in the course of the core game. We're about to get to one. That's why it's important. So then we have so after this discovery magic comes an age of legends, right? Where, technology and magic create a paradigm. This was created by Mr. Smith here. With the power,
big shocker.
With the power of magic. Now, Bob, tell me if you recognize this.
Oh, gosh.
With the power of magic discovered by the Arduin Grimoire, society enters a golden age where magic and machinery work hand in hand to solve the world's problems. Cities of towering spires, flying vehicles, and vast planet-spanning communication networks exist. Man can travel from one place to another instantly. Disease is virtually non-existent, and lifespans are dramatically increased. The art of war is not only unpracticed, but entirely forgotten. Crime virtually does not exist, for no one wants for anything. Society exists in several castes. Primarily those who have a talent for magic and those who do not. Those who possess the talent are celebrated but act as servants of all. Those who do not possess the talent pursue other avenues of life such as science, technology, civil service, or art. All are free to pursue their own interests and dreams.
Thank you, Robert Jordan.
Right. Now,
I said die.
This is exactly servants of all. It's literally.
Now, go back to that real quick.
Yep.
So you're talking about transportation, but not teleportation? Because teleportation was a no.
The key is in the campaign that we're going to play, it can't exist.
So I guess it's a distinction.
Yes.
Because normally the palette
was easy.
Yeah. Because normally the palette was that this couldn't happen in this game.
Correct.
You guys are saying that this would not happen in your campaign.
Correct. Because the idea is that all this amazing technology,
all this gets blown up.
The next thing
I can see where this is going.
The next thing is the Wars of Dragons, and then, but so forth.
We had to set something up for it to get blown up.
Yeah.
Now, here's another Aaron Smith. Again, if you've read Wheel of Time, you know what this is already. A source of power beyond even that of magic is discovered.
Oh, my goodness. Is it something dark and singular?
A power beyond that of magic and technology is sensed by some of the world's greatest casters. The power is beyond anything the world has yet known, yet seemingly to be the raw essence of creation itself, perhaps even the very essence of before creation. A way is devised to rip open a hole into the fabric of reality.
A bore, you might say.
To tap into this power. The potential could not only change civilization forever, but the very nature of humanity. The heavens above would be no limit to man, nor time, or reality. The infamous cosmos awaited. The plan succeeded beyond expectation, and a new reality was discovered beyond the bore. You even called it that. Cold and alien, beyond human comprehension and beyond infinite in scope. This was the discovery of the dark beyond.
So this is where
again,
I tied
this
it back.
was order.
Huh?
This feels very chaotic.
Well, no, because remember, this is them. They're like excited. They're working together. They're gonna like solve mankind's.
Sounded like they're about to tap into the unknown. That sounds chaotic.
This moment was order because everyone thought this was going to be good.
Right, and you can see, by the way, that this was added as part of a legacy. Right, so this was added as part of the Dark Beyond, as part of the legacy.
Right.
So
this was me tying it basically like I'm a big fan of like the Far Realm, or what's in PF2.
I don't know, the outer realm.
Yeah.
Nimbeloth
stuff, right? So basically like abominations and stuff like that, right? Like, so instead of having like the dark one, even I didn't go that far. I tied it back into like elements and like typical D&D fantasy that I enjoy, which is like, hey, how do we bring in the Far Realm into this, right? Because like, I like beholders. And
so rather than thinking of it like pure Wheel of Time, which was very clearly inspiration, right? Where it's the dark god bound outside of creation, the moment of creation by the creator. Aaron was like, no, this is like a portal to the warp.
Yeah.
Right? Chaos, demons, right? That's our whole theme, order versus chaos. Now, the next thing here is called a scene. And this is where I want to go back really quick to Microscope. Okay. Because we've talked about periods and we've talked about events.
Yes.
There exists a third type of card that you can add, which is called a scene. Okay. Inside Microscope, the game, what a scene is a exact specific moment in time that you and the players of your game are going to role play.
Okay, yeah, that would be the role playing part of the historical.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So
it is a role.
So during my turn, event, it's written in stone.
Right.
But the scene is open ended.
Correct. To a certain extent. So the way that a scene works is scenes are the smallest unit of history. Okay. So to create a scene, you pose a question, something that you want to find out about the history. The goal of the scene is to decide the answer to that question. We start off the scene without an answer and discover it through play. Okay. The difference here
what we do is then we change the game and play Fiasco, and then we tie whatever that happens.
That's
in.
actually similar.
So the idea here is that we'll be like, okay, I'm going to set a scene. Does the Empire go to war with the elves? Okay, we're gonna play this out. All right, you be the king, right? And I'll be like your general. You're like, the general who wants to like go to war. And you can be like the mage who thinks that, going against the elves would be suicide or something like that. And like we can all talk about it, we're setting up the scene. Like, okay, that's a scene. Let's role play. And that way it is like Fiasco, right? Where you sort of say, what are the stakes? And then
that's the first thing I thought of when you said like kind of because in Fiasco you don't know. Really, there's like sort of something could happen depending on the vote in a sense, but in this sense, it's all of us sort of talking it out.
Correct. And the idea is we just kind of play to find out what happens, and ultimately, like throughout the course of it, I've kind of said you're the king, so like you might just to make your decision.
We're going to war,
and we're going to war.
So, who decides that scene's over?
Everybody.
So the group kind of not the person that posed the question.
Well, I think the person that poses the question decides the answer.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So he's like, okay, I like where that went. Let's stop there. Like, and that's gonna be the answer. And then what? That scene becomes a card where it's like question and answer.
Correct.
Okay.
So
yeah, we have examples.
So during the scene, everyone should be trying to answer the question. Keep looking at the question during play. The scene ends when the players know the answer to the question. It doesn't matter if the characters know the answer or not.
Oh,
but when something happens that goes, oh, that was the answer.
Yeah. If you think the question has been answered, just say, hey, I think that answered the question.
Got it. Okay.
If everybody agrees, you're done with the scene. Okay. Now, the thing is, we weren't playing a role-playing game, right? We were playing a campaign-building game. But we like this idea.
And we weren't sitting around a table together.
Seems like right up Smith's alley, though,
so
to do
what
that.
we did is we allowed, so this is one from Aaron, okay? What we did is we did scenes in the following way. It allowed a player to ask a question. Okay, so notice that this is a phrase in the form of a question. Okay? After an age, is the nature of the dragon beast or noble? Because remember, going into our other thing, they had used magic to bind the dragons, and they were like, wild creatures. And so the idea is like, have they become domesticated? Are they still savage creatures?
Or like to like tie it into traditional fantasy, right? Are dragons animals, or are they like intelligent beings that cast spells?
So
right?
Aaron and by
What
the
do
way,
dragons look like in our campaign?
you'll notice that this was when we did the dragons focus. I added my one thing. This is what Aaron added. He says a formal debate in the High Council in the Chamber of Stars begins after hundreds of years of dragon domination. Is their nature now one of truly sentient creatures deserving of freedoms? Or is it only the magic of domination through the eras that allows them to think and speak? Okay, so that's like the big question that Aaron's asking. And then what we do is we all
Play by post.
add in
play by post, basically.
we play by post. And so like, but we're creating NPCs, we're creating characters in the history. So like, Aaron writes here. Aaron writes here, Chancellor Mador of the Seventh Star and Guardian of the Tower of Telath.
No idea.
What any of
was.
that stuff is. Making all that up. Chancellor Mador of the Seventh Star and Guardian of the Towers of Telath proposes to the High Council and his peers that though dragons were once beasts, through years of magical endowment and breeding, they have become awakened. Do they not now enjoy the fruits of the mind and should be free to choose their own path?
So this is like gods deciding if they should want to give sentience to dragons. In a sense?
These are like the people,
humans.
the humans, the magic casters.
So they control them.
Yes.
And so they're like, do we want to let them? Do we want them just to become beasts or become something
Should
higher?
we let them free to choose their own path, or does the council fear what may happen when the slave,
That's quite
when their
interesting.
slave force can choose their own way?
That's quite interesting.
It's kind of like Daenerys freeing the Unsullied.
Or like, AI. Do robots with sentience have rights?
Right.
Like, we'll be asking that question in 5-10 years, right?
Oh, maybe less than that.
So then George added something with, in his own size from the I think it's supposed to be the third, but from the third star, name purged of name purged, right? Like
redacted.
Name redacted from the logs.
Gosh.
Which I appreciate that.
No,
it goes against Microscope, but I like how he did it.
It goes against Microscope, but I like the feeling that it does. Next, you will say we should add a dog to the council as well. Ridiculous. So whoever this person was thought that Chancellor Mador's point was horrible. So then I had mine. And the way we did it, by the way, with these scenes is the player who created the scene got the first say. Then everybody else would weigh in. And then the person who created the scene would get the final state.
Which is kind of like how the rounds work.
Which is kind of how the rounds work. So I write in General. Now, by the way, I wrote mine last. Aaron wrote Chancellor Mador of the Seventh Star, and Obvious wrote of the Third Star. And I go, okay, I guess stars are a thing. So I don't even know what that means. None of us do. But I put in General Aldine, commander of the East and Fourth Star, rises and angrily voices, I remember well the destruction wrought by a red that had broken free of our domination during the siege of Baal. Intelligent, yes, but possessed of an insidious and cunning mind. The magic of domination has given them a will to dominate and destroy stronger than any man.
Side note, it's another real-time thing, but I love how we capitalize things in here. It's not domination.
It's the magic of
domination.
The capital D, the magic of domination.
Like, domination is a thing.
Is a magic thing. Yeah.
These guys know, like when they talk about domination, they're talking about like an art.
Yeah.
So then Aaron gets to write the final part of the scene, right?
Yes, I get a little wordy.
Okay, Aaron gets a little wordy, yes. And thus the council...
Did Tim not join in on this one?
Tim was kind of in and out because he was like getting married and like having a relationship. But he didn't... sometimes Tim was basically like, I'm not going to be able to get to it today.
I was just wondering how this was structured.
Yep. There's a checklist, and I think at a certain point you'd be like, "Hey, if you can't do it, we'll just keep going."
We'll just keep going.
Yep,
We'll just keep the game going. And so Aaron's thing right here was because again, Aaron got to weigh in, then I got to weigh in, George got to weigh in, Tim would have gotten to weigh in if he wanted to, and then Aaron gets to make the final decision. It's like he's heard everybody else's points. And thus the council ruled that dragons were not to be freed, but kept under tight leash and key. Some resisted this ruling, even going so far as to attempt and free dominated dragons. The results were horrifying. Raging dragons brought down violence unseen in hundreds of years upon the races of men. Death and destruction once more entered the world. Those responsible, including Chancellor Mador, that was the guy who was arguing for their release.
The first one, so
he must have rebelled and freed them. Those responsible, including Chancellor Mador, were brought before the council to face judgment. Mador faced the choice of geas or severing, to be bound for life, to never more disobey the laws of the lands, and eventually to face death, for the binding of the geas strain the soul and remove the gifts of immortality, or to be cut off forever from touching mana.
So what's nice about this is this is obviously real time.
I was like, this sounds
but
like
it's tied into D&D because Gaius is a spell that basically does this.
Or being stilled.
I was like, I've heard this.
Being expelled from the council and never more to know the feeling of magic. And look, the thing is, everybody has, I encourage you to do this. If you guys love, and all of you love an anime, don't copy it. But if everyone goes, yeah, I love that part of that anime, we should totally put that in our thing. Or if you love a video game and you're like, everyone's like, that kind of character's kind of like The Witcher. Everyone's like, cool. We're all cool with it.
This was our home game. We weren't making a product or anything.
You're not trying to be one of those wannabe DMs who's like trying to turn their thing into a movie or a novel or sell it on YouTube. Just it's your home game. If everybody likes it, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
And also next time, very likely, Tim's going to go and the palette, Wheel of Time.
Right. The next
and now I'll have to work for a little bit.
So Mador instead did the unthinkable. He fled from justice and vowed that the council would pay for their sins against him and dragonkind.
Set up an enemy.
Mador began to tap into the rage of dragons, learning how to channel and release the power through domination, binding the hate of the dragons to his will. Mador became the very thing he sought to end, a dragon master of unprecedented power, a dragon master whom channeled the dragon's own instinct while still dominating the mind of the beast. Mador became the world's first dragon lord.
Don't know what that meant then.
This development with dragons and domination led to a new subspecies of beasts, the chromatics, the evil dragons of D&D.
Which is going to eventually, I think there was like a chromatics versus...
all of this has to tie back into the war, right?
Empowered by darker magics and their own rage, the chromatics were fury incarnate. They would also prove ultimately to be uncontrollable. And by the way, that happens here. Notice that the next period of time is called the War of Dragons.
Well, I remember seeing that card, so I was like, I can easily see where this is tying into that.
But I don't actually remember if War of Dragons or that card came first.
Right. We might have created War of Dragons first. So I even write here, the Dragon Lord versus the Dragon Masters, chromatics versus metallics. The rising power of Mador, the Dragon Lord, leads to an all-out war with Castul and their forces of dominated dragons. So this is House of the Dragon.
Yep.
This is, he's got his evil dragons. They have their good dragons, but which are actually bound to their will through domination. And now they're going on a full-on, nuclear scale. And by the way, the destruction of Castul, right? So the thing gets destroyed. And then here we have another question, posed by George. Why does Mador need the Scepter of Dawn? Nobody even knew what the Scepter of Dawn was.
Right.
But we've established that there was this war, that Mador was the Dragon Lord, and now we're going to have a conversation. So once again, everybody comes in and, adds in a thing. And we even also added in like little comments here about like, not just in character stuff, but just like, going back and forth. And I was like here, I was like,
oh, we do this all the time. Like, oh, I love this. Or, geez, will time much? Or
like I wrote here, I'll write a more narrative version later. Scepter is quasi-sentient power artifact. Instrument of change, chaos. Despises stagnation and order. Change is good. Sensed conflict years ago during the initial debate on dragon rights. Sent its corrupting influence to Mador. In dreams and visions, led him towards the goal of allowing the scepter outside the world so that it could remake it and undo it. Surprise twist to come.
And what's great about that is Derek's obviously responding to this question, playing the scene, but look how he's tying it in to like even all the way back to the original scene.
Right. To be fair, this was my response. Couple bullet points. This was Aaron's response.
Aaron, that's just Aaron like while he's using the bathroom break.
See, this is why Aaron's on another level, because everybody else writes sentences and Aaron writes paragraphs. So Aaron wrote a whole bunch of fan fiction here. Apparently, Mador. And you know what it is? It's Mador and Aldine, right? Which was one of the other council members from back in the day.
Yeah.
And they're having a conversation. This, by the way, totally is like Luz Theron and
this is
the opening of Wheel of Time, where Luz Theron and Ellen, Betrayer of Hope, are like talking to each other. But
okay,
yes.
Perfect.
Oh my gosh, that's quite the novel.
Yes. So, anyways. That is Aaron. But the point is, you don't need to.
I like to read that sometimes.
Yeah, and part of it I did is because I wasn't trying to be obnoxious. It's if people want to read it, they can read it. If not, whatever.
Yeah.
So the long story short is the scenes that we did basically allow you to sort of interject your own concepts and your own ideas, but get other people's input input because normally you don't get
Correct.
everyone's
Usually you
input.
just put an event. Now, you could have a whole game with no scenes, I assume?
Correct.
Okay.
You could. And it really depends on your style of play and all that other stuff. And then finally, you end the game. It's good to agree before you start a focus that is going to be your last for the session. So like,
well, that was a good point. We should probably end there for the night.
well, that way everyone has fair warning that the game is going to end and can play towards a satisfying conclusion, you know?
If you want to end, because this is actually ending the game, not just ending
Yeah, so you
the
might
night.
say, right. You might say,
Maybe playing 15 sessions
It
with
could
Ben.
take you a couple days, right? But you might say like, okay, we're going to do one more focus about the dragons, and then we'll do one more focus about the other thing, and then I think we'll call it,
Okay.
right? Is everybody good with that? And then we'll go.
Yeah, we've already beat this to death.
And this was a case where like this was really where Derek kind of used like his GM power to kind of be like, all right, guys, we got a lot. Like
we're only playing for
let's
10
wrap it up.
sessions.
Well, this was designed to be a fuller game.
we were really planning on playing this one for a couple of years. Didn't work out,
but so at the end of the day, when you're done, you are going to have either a stack of note cards, right? Or you're going to have a Trello board, and your players will have built this history of your world. Now, again, we started with the discovery of magic, and presumably thousands of years have passed between that and the fall of Costilian, right? And we go all the way down here.
the very last of it. What do we got?
The very last one is the Duchy of Caligrad.
The Duke. Always got the Duke.
Always got the Duke. It's another Aaron one.
Is it dinner with the Duke?
Oh my!
Tell me it's dinner with the Duke. Has to be dinner with the Duke. For those at home, we have this. I don't know why it's like an
the dining
camping
hall
thing.
was cast in shadows and gloom.
Our players for years were obsessed with having dinner with the evil Duke. I don't
Right.
know. I don't know why.
Well, we used it as a
It's like Strahd.
Well, no,
Kinda. Yeah, we wanted like the noble villain.
Yeah.
But they always used it as an example of like a conflict that wasn't just combat, like the bad guy that you couldn't just go kill,
Yeah.
right? Because he had like diplomatic immunity or power.
Good old tea ceremony.
And so again, I talked about this before, but here we call these the true.
Ironically, I think the Duke gets assassinated in that one.
we call these the true names, right? And these were basically the proper nouns that came up during the course of our game. Now, here's some. These are definitely Aaron's because I would never have created this stuff.
Correct.
Tarak Nor, Elnor, Vananor, right? But you can see things. Some of these stuff, like for example, anyone who's read Dragonlance, the King Priest. I took that from Dragonlance, right? It's sort of an obscure thing. These were like the gods of our
Literally
world.
the ways.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, literally the ways.
Anyone who's a Northern Reaches fan, this has never not been true. That this is always.
I
just
love the ways. I can't help. I'm not even ashamed about it.
Okay.
Like, yeah. To be fair, this isn't just Wheel of Time. It's Wheel of Time, Conan, and Earth Dawn.
right. Yeah.
What's the blood trolls? Does that say blood
There
trolls?
you go. Who knows?
I don't know, but that sounds sweet. Because remember, trolls is a big thing from Tim.
I think it's a picture of literally me playing Conan.
It's literally a screenshot of Aaron playing Conan, the MMO.
I
Right?
was playing Conan. I was like, guys, this was awesome. I want to add this to the campaign.
All right. Malkar, the Aeon. I believe Aeons are what the term we use for sort of like for gods. But
Yeah, because we really like the idea of icons and aeons, but not deities. Because the idea of like you could have like this super powerful person that wasn't
well,
a god.
we were very intrigued by the idea, like the Conanian concept of a god.
Yeah.
Which is like, oh, it's a god, but you could like totally kill
you
it.
kill it.
Oh,
Yeah.
You know.
okay.
Anyways, Malkar, Aeon of Slaughter. Unchecked, the trolls began to form various tribes. While most remained savage primitives, some trolls remembered the power of the Borderlanders in their various clashes, and specifically the power of the gods. A tribe of trolls seeking to counter this power with their own began taking to the worship of Malkar, deity of slaughter and bloodlust. The trolls became frenzied in serving their god who thrived on bloodshed, and the Aeon grew to immense power quickly. So
Oh, yeah,
powerful.
that's right.
It's 40K works.
The aeons in this got more power by belief.
That's actually my favorite way of God power is like either belief or like words have power type thing. So
Yeah.
the more people that believe, the stronger they
Emotion
are.
and thought and
D&D
belief
is kind of like
huge
that,
in
right?
this.
Like
It's
D&D.
supposed to be,
It's
but
supposed
really
to.
not.
Yeah, okay.
So powerful did this
I like the
Aeon
idea.
become, it became a prime Aeon and started to develop true sentience of its own. This was also inspired by Earth Dawn, where the
Yes.
gods are the passions.
Yes.
Which is sort of like, it's almost like in 40K, right? How the chaos gods are like reflections of
I
emotions.
like how George is on multiple accounts within the stream.
While still being constrained by the faith and beliefs of the trolls that created him, Malkar became aware of its own existence. Malkar began to teach the trolls not just how to kill, but how to make war. In a way, the trolls became civilized, building vast stone cities and temples. This became their machine of war, and sacrifices were made from sunrise to feed the might of Malkar. This tribe of trolls became known as blood trolls and were some of the fiercest creatures to ever stalk the land.
Sounds sweet.
So that's part of our game. So imagine you're level 7 or 8 or 9, you're the GM, and you come in and then you see a blood troll. And you know what that is because you were there when you built it. Hell, you might have been the player who built it. And now your GM got to stat it out as some badass motherfucker.
And you're shitting your pants.
It's also, I feel like if you're a GM and you're not doing an adventure path, and you almost want inspiration. The inspiration's like sort of already there.
Well, this
like you guys
became
did the inspiration.
a Bible for Derek.
That's what I'm saying. Like Derek's not going like, all right, it's Friday night. You guys are kind of going to go to this area, or maybe you guys want to go left or right. And it's like, oh, I feel like this is a great opportunity to throw those. Oh, remember those blood trolls? Perfect opportunity to throw that in.
Right.
It's like
Derek, go look at the
inspiration hits.
legacies. Whatever.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're going to talk about
because
this.
once the campaign starts,
Right.
now I'm the GM,
Yep.
you know, so I
He
get
gets all of his power back.
I get all my power back, and I can. But when I bring in elements, they're not unknown elements.
Yeah.
Now again, your PC may not necessarily know what something is, but you are the player.
Yeah.
You're the audience for your own PC.
But I just think like just like as a GM, where a lot of these GMs like feel nervous about sandboxing and they like don't know what to do, and then it's gonna be fun. I don't know how am I gonna do this?
This is
It's
a great
like,
way to deal with that.
First, your players made it, so
Right.
it's their fun. They've did it, or it'd be
Derek
silly.
says blood trolls.
Yeah.
Well, so
But it's
did I
like
write
so much
that one?
inspiration. Yeah,
you
you
did.
wrote that
Okay.
that thing.
Okay, but remember, trolls came from Tim,
That's right.
right? So immediately, both Tim and I are getting excited.
Yes.
Because Tim's like, trolls?
Trolls
I'm
are
like,
important.
blood trolls.
Yeah, blood trolls. Yeah.
And then we're also scared because we got super, you can't help it, right?
Yeah.
Players want to make everything ridiculous and awesome. So all that writing and all that putting into this make this awesome.
Take all that car op they put into their PCs. Now they're putting it into the campaign.
Right.
And
But
then,
now Derek gets it off.
Yeah.
And Derek's like, listen, I didn't make a blood troll.
Look,
you made Malkar, Aaron. What do you want?
Yeah.
what
He's
do you-
obviously a powerful necromancer forever.
Yeah. And so this is a very awesome way that you can use to sort of build these ideas. And again, I love the idea of doing this in person.
Yeah.
But I think doing it over like the Trello,
If
like
you
this,
can't. People, you have friends across the world.
And again,
Well, there's
even,
strengths and weaknesses to both, right? Because you're not going to do like if you care about like the writing and the detail and shit like that, you're not going to do that in a
correct.
microscope
Because
session.
when you're writing this in person, you're not going to write the kind of paragraphs that we wrote. You're going to take a couple of quick notes. You know, people tend to write quickly.
and if you have chicken scratch.
So there is a lot of advantage in some ways to doing this digitally. Now I like playing with note cards. It's fine. It's fun.
Do digitally in person.
But digitally in person
That'd be nice.
might be nice. And then everybody
Yeah.
can just have the Trello board shared, or maybe somebody just projects it onto a TV or whatever, and you can type stuff in. And
honestly, you're going to want this resource available, right?
Yeah,
Because a
it's a
GM
nice-
isn't going to like take a picture of all the index cards,
Yeah.
right? So
I just really like this idea of this of GM inspiration for their sandbox world when they get into a rut. It's like it's there already. Something tells me like a lot of GMs are nervous about that, and I feel like it's you don't have to be because it's already sort of built, and it has that had a lot of open ending solutions there too. Right. But there's just so much. There's so much substance there that you can really draw off of. Create entire areas in your game that you like. Where do these mountains come from? Because of the Dragon Wars.
You don't have to explain it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because people are like, oh, yeah, I remember when George made that card.
Yeah.
Right?
I could easily see that being very nice for GMs, like
and the other
newer GMs too.
And the other thing is like, don't be afraid. Don't feel like you have to make this all up by yourself. Things like the Tome of Adventure Design, right?
Oh yeah.
Things like Toolbox, right? Stuff that I have shown on this channel before. Okay, Chat GPT,
100%.
right? These can all be
Make ChatGPT a player.
ChatGPT did his own adventure.
yeah. So like you can totally use random Oracle tables, come up with like this thing here has like, there's the villain's plan, right? That's one of the things that you can roll. You roll randomly. He is trying to conceal I don't know. I don't even know what that means. Concealment from. Oh, from who is he trying to conceal it from? Okay. He's trying to conceal from another villain, right? And how he's concealing it. We roll again. He's concealing it through assassination, right? And so you
Okay,
now
sure.
you're now an event, right? Where like the evil duke,
Yeah.
right, assassinates the evil king,
Because the evil king knew what was up.
and the evil king knew it was up, and he's trying to hide a truth, which is that the duke has actually gained power by making a deal with the devils, right? And the king knew about this, and even though he was an evil king, he was like, dude, you don't fuck with devils.
You don't fuck with
Yeah,
devils.
yeah.
So the
I mean,
duke killed him,
stupid.
right? And so boom, now I've added a cool event to my game, and now we have this like diabolic Duke Lord, maybe like a Hell Knight, whatever you want to go with it. The point is like you don't have to like come up with this stuff off the top of your head.
Yeah.
You can use random tables. You can use, which we've talked about many times on this channel. You can use Chat GPT.
And you also don't have to use anything, meaning, once again, leave blanks. In fact, there was a period in there
That
I
we got
noticed
untouched.
we just didn't add any events to it.
Yeah, if
Now
you-
that period's still there, and Derek can still reference that in the campaign.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of freedom, with the exception of the left and the right, to decide what the
Wars of Independence.
Yeah.
we didn't actually put any events under this period.
So that was kind of my back to that Atlantis thing. No one ever put a focus on
Right,
this, so therefore it never really got any. But that leaves a lot. Like you said, blank
Yeah,
for Derek.
it says the only description is AKA the demi-human rebellions. Because remember, everything that we've been talking about before was like humans,
Aeons.
and dragons,
Yeah.
right? And though this is way earlier. in
Oh,
history,
that's right,
Before
yeah,
the
yeah.
aeons.
Yeah.
So this was when it was like humans enslaved dragons and all this stuff. But we never really talked about elves. And we didn't talk about dwarves.
Yeah.
So this period was going to be the Wars of Independence. Apparently the demi-humans rebelled. But we never talked about it. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen. We just
it did happen. There's a card said it did.
Right.
Well,
It's
it
a
did
period-
happen.
it's
We
a
just
period.
don't know what happened.
Yeah.
We don't have any of the events, none of the scenes.
Ooh, it's like the lost
Yeah.
history.
Maybe
Exactly.
it's like a dark age. I don't know.
That's a big thing on One Piece too. Like
and
the
you can
lost
see
800
too
years.
that like now one thing that I do think is somewhat useful is, and this is more just like advice, right? You can see that the last period, okay, which is the fall of Castilian, right? Which is again, Castilian became like our Rome, like a big human empire, not like the uber magic power of the old empire of Castile,
Yeah.
but more of like a empire based on, but it collapsed. But this is where our campaign was going to start. You'll see it has a lot more events, right?
Yeah, like everyone was focused on this.
Because
Well, this is
Or
the
winding
point.
in,
this is
yeah.
this is
This
the
is
most
really the
recent
campaign.
This is the most recent history.
Mhm.
Like it's cool and all to talk about the dragon roars and all the other stuff that happened thousands of years ago, which could be true, but
Right.
this
This is where you're playing.
is where you're playing. So again, there's like 6 or 7 here. There's like 12 or 13 in this one.
And I feel like we really tried to make like the events here like adventure based, site based, like I don't remember all of them, but like we tried to make sure that there was things in there that would be very relevant for Derek to immediately pull into an adventure.
Well, that's what I was talking about with the inspiration. You could you could easily say, like, there's just a lot of history there. It's like this mountain is important. This site could be important, and why? Because 800 years ago, this something happened there.
Yeah.
So I think this deserves particular call out because I think this was something I did and then something Aaron did that was pretty cool. So the focus was trolls for this round.
Sweet.
And I had an event called the Knights of Flame. An order of knights created during the reign of Agnar II. Elite trained and battle hardened, they wield blades of flame in their fight against the trolls.
Smart.
Instrumental in clearing the lands of monsters during Agnar's campaign, their zeal and soldiery also proved useful in the wars to come against non-trolls as well, even if many in the order disapproved. Okay, so that was the Knights of Flame.
Okay.
Then I created a scene called The Knights of Flame Undergo a Schism. What is a splitting?
Yeah.
What is the new order called and how are they different? Okay. And by the way, you can see here that this was also part of the troll focus and it was also calling back to the unification wars.
Oh boy.
Good shit.
So here comes Aaron's. Okay. Now, yeah, you'll see what happens. I'll do Aaron justice here. Run! The farmer cried to his wife, though his words did not mask the desperation of his voice. The trolls were too many and too fast. They came upon the couple, circling them, ensuring no escape. For a brief moment, there was pause as the normally murderous rampage of the trolls quieted into stillness. The farmers swung their heads side to side, their panted breaths being the only sound that they could muster. After a pause, the women whispered, "What? What are they waiting for?" Before the words were fully out of her mouth, a gap broke between some of the trolls as something moved forward to the humans. So earthed on here, Smith. Before them walked forth a humanoid on 2 legs, but there the semblance to humanity ended. A tall creature. This is a test for Bob. A tall creature with gangly limbs, dressed in a robe that looked, if not was made of, human flesh.
Okay.
The head of the creature resembled that of an octopus, with long and wide black eyes that were lidless. The creature's face tentacles twitched, seemingly of their own accord, as the creature stalked forth.
It's like a demogorgon.
What is this?
Is it like a?
It is not a demogorgon.
Cephalid.
It is not a cephalid. Now, see, folks, I talked about this the other day on the stream, if you were paying attention to this. So everybody in chat knows what this is. They especially know this because Aaron talked about how the boar, which was opened to another realm, wasn't to a realm of evil, it was to the far realm. So everybody knows what this is, and as does Ayush. It is an illithid.
Never would have got that.
Also called a mind flayer.
Mind Flayer was the one I was thinking of from
So
the show.
Taking inspiration from
you're talking about
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things,
Oh.
yes.
Yeah.
And the reason that's in that is because mind flayers are from Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
In
Correct.
fact, that's
That's
one
what
of
they-
the copyrighted monsters. That's why you don't see them in Pathfinder.
Yeah,
Which
no.
is a shame because
I remember just reading about the Mind Flayer too, but I said the wrong name, I think, when I was saying, but I was thinking of it. But
Now this is
I would not have got an Ithalid.
yeah, so it's a
I would not have got
mind
that.
flayer. But this is a thing from, so Aaron's pulling a little bit from Earth Dawn, where these weird creatures are called horrors when they come from another realm. So,
far realm, yeah.
Horror! The man cried, surrendering his last word. The creature's eyes turned red as it raised a hand, crimson light streaming down its arm like a blood mist. And then it pointed to the man, and black-red energy shot forth, engulfing the farmer entirely. The woman screamed as the man blazed with dark magic, but in a breath, it had passed. The farmer looked unfazed, sitting motionless. Are you? The woman began. Then the farmer turned his face to her, skin already pale as life fled from his body. His eyes were glazed over as if in death, but then began to glow red. Without recognition and with malice, the man stood up silently and stared at his former wife. The woman gasped and began to crawl away, but the horror was not finished. Its tentacles lashed out, grabbing her skull with the strength of 10 men. The tentacles began to burrow into her brain, pulsing with hunger. The next scream was inhuman, a voice never meant to be heard, as those tentacles were cleaved in two by a flaming greatsword. The knight leapt into the midst of trolls and horror, cleaving through the tentacle and flesh alike. Surprised and off guard, the trolls fell back in terror at the one who had wounded their master and brought fire. For a brief moment, they thought they could crush the single warrior, and for a brief moment, savagery nearly overcame their fear. Then the knight spun, bringing up a hand from his weapon, and from his hand, red fire erupted into the crowd of trolls. An arcing blast of flame seared and charred the troll flesh, driving them back in panic. The horror regained his composure. Already, its wounds began to close. A voice like that of grinding stone seemed to come from all sides, yet no sound was uttered. Foolish, to channel mana in my presence. Your soul will be mine without struggle. No mouth moved on the creature's face, but there was no doubt as to who the voice could be from. The woman gasped in terror as she skid back, not even thinking or fleeing, despite now that the trolls had been broken. The knight turned slowly, the flames upon his blade now a dull simmer. The horror attacked swiftly, once more channeling its dark magic of corruption. Red mist enveloped the knight, who stayed still, and just as quickly, the magic seemed to be absorbed into the talisman around the knight's neck. How? The voice boomed again. The knight could not help but imagine the emotion of shock in the creature's voice, despite the impossibility of such a feat. We have no soul for you to corrupt, the knight spoke.
Bob's like, oh,
Lumbering over like a poorly played puppet, the once human farmer hissed like an animal. Without even taking its gaze from the horror, the knight cut down the thrall in a single swipe of his blade. The woman's mouth gaped in a scream that could not sound. Nothing for you to taint with your mark. Nothing to open the path of insanity from channeling. Slowly, the knight stepped forward. For the first time in its physical existence, the horror took a step backwards. You cannot convert us. You cannot destroy us. You can only kill us, and we will not stop. The knight raised his sword, but already it was too late. The horror glowed briefly with red magic, then seemed to collapse into dust. The physical form destroyed. The true entity had fled. The knight paused for a moment, then turned and began walking away. Wait, wait, the woman called, finally finding her voice. Who are you? Are you a knight of flame? The warrior stopped, turning his head back slightly. Once, in another life. But their conviction was not enough. They did not go far enough, and so they could not win. No, I no longer share that name with my former brothers. Then who are you? The knight thought for a moment, seemingly examining the talisman around his neck, the only thing he had left of his humanity. A phylactery. The very idea was abhorrent to any mortal. Who would use their own soul as a matrix? Simply because it was severed from your body did not mean the corruption could not take effect. Still, sacrifices must be made. At last, the knight spoke again. We are those who gave up everything so that others may see the dawn. We have sacrificed our lives, our souls, and now even honor. We stand between the dark and the light. We are the Knights of Shadow. And then without another word, he walked back into the darkening night. The woman at last had overcome her shock and shock and saw the fate of her husband before her. Hysterical weeping took her as she wailed in agony. The knight lamented himself. Such attractions would only bring her ruin and corruption. The enemy would use anything, everything to win, and only by being as ruthless could humanity be saved. But not all could be saved. Many would pay the price for the next generation if there were to be another. So Smith wrote this massive statement. But then
It was a good question.
but that was my question. But then I love that. I love that the idea that they almost become evil to be able to kill that.
Right, and remember too, right? Like the Matrix here, right? It's not good and evil. It's law and chaos.
Right.
This is very evil, but I mean, it's directly opposed to chaos.
So my response to that was, the Lord Commander surveyed what remains of the town. A few fires still smoldered near the center of the city. The rest was charred ash and crumbled stone. The burnt forms of the townsfolk lay scattered about the streets. Most died from the flames. The rest by the sword. Good, intoned the Lord Commander to himself. Whatever corruption had festered within had been cleansed. The material form mattered not. Only that the souls of the untainted were saved.
Derek and I were channeling our Warcraft 3 here.
The Lord Commander idly listened to a report from one of his captains. Another village not far from here was reported to carry the signs of corruption. Another village in need of purity. The Lord Commander watched as a group of soldiers flung open the storm doors to a cellar half buried in the wreckage. He watched as a group of women and children fled outward in all directions. Watched as his men cut them down with blade and with axe.
Brutal.
He caught the sound of cloth snapping in the wind and shifted his gaze upward. He saw the white and gold banner of the knights fluttering above the carnage, embroidered with the flame of purity, a sign, a symbol. This place had been cleansed. Good. So, we got a little dark on it. But again, the idea here is that this is us having fun. And building this history of this world. And now people know who these Knights of Shadows are.
And that's very important. Fun, right? Right? Because Microscope is a game, and we were still playing a game, even though we're doing a work, right? We're building a campaign world. We made it fun, right? We made it like we're going to enjoy this experience because we felt like writing about this, and it was entertaining to us, even if no one else cared. We thought it was interesting. And then, later on, if Derek's like, "Ooh, I want to have Knights of Shadow in here" or whatever like that, he's got all this stuff that he can just pull from, right?
And if you want to be the tragic anti-hero, it's like, oh yes, I was a former Knight of Shadow, and everyone's like, cool, dude, you're like the cool anti-paladin, cool hexblade character.
But I mean, think about that mechanically, right? Most games, they're not going to let you play the evil version of the paladins. Right here, though, mechanically, you've just justified why that should be a playable class.
Right.
So if you want to be the guy who's like the evil paladin, okay, you fit into the lore, and you're still a hero. You're still like a good guy per se.
Yeah. And so, we did this online using Trello. You can do it in person over many sessions using note cards. But the long story short is, and again, you don't have to go in depth in this. One of the advantage of doing it asynchronously, like play by post, is you can take your time and write that down. No one's going to sit there in person
wait for you to do that.
Wait for someone to write all
even
that.
as fast as I write.
And so what ends up happening is, once as a GM, once you feel like everything, we've built up enough of a history, there's a bunch of good stuff for you to dig your claws into. You say, okay, guys, we're gonna do one more round or two more rounds, and we're gonna focus on this and this, and then then you're done. And now you have your history, and you can post it online, or you can take screenshots of it, pictures of it, post it, digitize it, make it available, it becomes like a world Bible that you all can share from. And, I think, most people can probably put this together in 1 or 2 or 3 sessions and have a pretty in-depth set of circumstances. And here's the thing. It's not going to win an Oscar. Okay. It's just like when you play PBTA games. Okay. It's not going to be good, but it is going to be yours. And that's what's so important. It's the being yours part. Right. Now, don't get me wrong. I think you can come up with some pretty cool shit, but I think the most important part is just that collaborative nature. And Bob, you mentioned, that you had, we had done the collaborative nature for Root.
Yes.
And that was, because here's the thing. This is really hardcore in the paint.
Yeah.
But like, if you look at a game like, Fabula Ultima, right? Fabula Ultima has group world creation, right? And, you sit around and everybody answers one of these questions, or you answer as a group, what is the shape of your world? And then what role does magic and technology have in your setting? Create the major kingdoms and nations of your world. Mark their borders on the map and discuss their relations, trust, alliances, conflict. Each person should contribute 1 kingdom or 1 nation during this step. Discuss the major historical events that shaped your world into what it is. Each person should contribute 1 important event to the dramatically altered the history of your setting. What are the enigmas and mysteries of your setting? And what are the terrible threats that cast a shadow over the world?
And this is very manageable. We did this in 1 session.
Yeah.
And it was very effective. Like, we knew what things were. We could reference it. Like, we understood.
We did Root in a 1.5. You did a little bit offline.
We had some tipped goals. That
Yeah,
sure. But Root's another great example. Like, we
so that's 3-4 hours.
knew what was going on, right?
And the other thing too is like, Fabula Ultima has like, these ideas of the pillars, right?
Yeah.
If you haven't watched our Fabula Ultima stream, you should definitely go watch our Fabula Ultima stream. But remember, Fabula Ultima had those pillars, right? That all Fabula Ultima games have to be based around like, souls and crystals and all this other stuff.
Right. That's their palette.
Guess what that is? That is their palette.
Yeah.
It's just pre-written in this game.
Right.
In Fabula Ultima.
Well, do a lot of people you think take ideas of Microscope and put them into their world building of their TTRPG?
I do not know. But here are the pillars from Fabula Ultima. Palette, yes. Ancient ruins and harsh lands. Palette, yes. A world in peril. Palette, yes. Clashing communities. Palette, yes. Everything has a soul. Palette, yes. Conflict between magic and technology. Conflict, yes. Heroes of many sizes and many shapes. It's all about the heroes. Mystery and discovery and growth. So those are the 8 pillars of Fabula Ultima. And when you're creating the world, you're supposed to constantly be referencing those ideas. If you're creating a Fabula Ultima game and it doesn't have some sort of concept or idea about the struggle and the role of magic and technology in your game, you're not playing it right. And so obviously Fabula Ultima has a sort of predefined set. Right. What you do with the Microscope approach is you're building those pillars.
Right.
That you're going to construct your world upon. So, I definitely recommend people read and check out the Fabula Ultima series. It's really, really cool. And the world creation it's obviously abbreviated. This isn't going to.
It works totally fine,
but it works great, and you end up with a great book of stuff. Now, if you want something a little bit more in depth, then you can go a little bit more in depth and go through it.
But don't feel like you have to go that deep.
Right. Like we even started with the discovery of magic. You could have done your whole campaign. Your whole Microscope could have just been like, I'm going to start with when the empire began to collapse. And then here's the empire starts to collapse. Here's the start of the campaign. Let's build up the history between that. Everything before the empire is lost to history. We don't know about it. Maybe you'll discover it through play, but let's just focus on the last 100 years and how civilization fell apart.
So that just depends on like your play group and how deep they really want to go as a group.
And again, like going back, like this process was fun, so we wanted to do it. And if your group is having fun with it, great, go as deep as you want. I mean, if you have good organization, I don't think you have to really worry about going too far because you're going to be able to filter down to what you want, right? So write as much as you want, but don't feel like you have to. Like that, just having a lot of stuff doesn't make itself inherently good, right? What makes it good is people are excited, and they're interested, and they're participating, and they're involved, and they're invested. When that starts to get like tiresome, that's a great time for the GM to use the veto call to be like, all right, guys, we did a pretty good job here. Let's wrap this up.
Yeah.
Because now that we've built this cool world, let's play in it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's actually another part. That's part of the secret tech okay, of collaborative world building. I get it. In theory, we should all be pure Gygaxian, unbiased. We come to the game and like, I will roll randomly and I will play whatever fate has decreed. But no, like
Only Ben can do that.
We all have ideas, or George.
Good
we
point.
all have ideas about like what we want to play and what we want to do, right? Well, when you're creating the world, just make sure that the thing that you want to do and the thing that you want to be a part of is part of the campaign world.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you are like, I really want to be in like druids, and I think I'm going to make a druid, and you're like, oh, cool. Like I'll make the druid, the history of the druidic order, that my character that I'm planning on making will be a member of that order.
Mm-hmm.
And I get to sort of insert. Now, granted, other people might insert their
Yeah,
stuff.
they could do some stuff.
Right? They could do their own stuff. But that means they'll be interested in my druidic order struggles, right? When I'm trying to kill all the other druids so that I can level up.
As one does.
As one does when it's a druid. And so it's an interest, like you can it's kind of selfish, but it's a good kind of selfish.
It's good kind of selfish because everyone's supposed to be selfish.
Like if there's things that you want to see in the game or things that you want to see in the world, put them in there. If you like, I don't know, if you like fighting orcs or trolls, put them in there. If you want to,
you like giants and dwarves, giant and dwarf war.
Yeah, and we'll make giants and dwarves used to have a kingdom that expand the whole world, and then they collapsed when the giants attacked. You want to
run up swords? Okay.
Right. Paladin,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
running up swords, right? And we could talk about how in this world there is no gravity, right? And that steel has the tensile strength 100 times what it would be in our world, right? And everybody has huge forearms, just massive biceps that they are able to hold out.
Well, when it's like a big ogre or something like that, and it's using a big blade,
now to be clear,
I feel like I could run with that sword.
Now listen, this actually came up in a stream or on the Patreon. I'm not sure, but someone made a joke about the sword running, and I said, listen. If the following had occurred, okay? If the following had occurred, I describe a massive ogre, towering, twice the height of you. It's coming back. It's got a massive club. You realize, actually, it's just a tree branch, right? That's been shorn off. He swings it down on you, and I'm like, what do you do? You're like, oh, I'm leaping out of the way, and I go, awesome, roll define danger, and then I go, cool. The massive club slams into the ground, thudding. Sending a spray of earth everywhere and broken cobblestones. The ogre struggles, and you go, I run up the branch to his face.
Did that happen in L5R game?
In the L5R?
I don't think so.
When the ogre attacked the village, this is the one you dipped out of.
Oh, then no.
I thought someone ran up to the ogre's club.
I don't know.
I don't remember.
But anyways.
That would be very disappointing if this happened and I wasn't part of it.
Listen, the ogre club holding it, you run up it, slash the ogre in the face.
Yeah, no problems.
I would have no problem with that. The problem was a human-sized creature wielding a human-sized blade had it stuck out, and you wanted to run up it. That doesn't even make any sense.
I thought he was bigger than a human. I thought he was like an orc or something.
Yeah, it was an orc.
Yeah, he's bigger than a human.
Okay, let's say he's a foot bigger.
Yeah?
Do you think if an NBA player held out a broom at arm's length,
you could run up
that a human being could run up that?
A short one at that, because he was.
I was a dwarf.
So very stout and dense. This is like you know what this is? This is Bob's bad landing.
Oh,
this is Bob's scum.
This is Bob's scum and villainy.
This is Bob's scum and villainy moment.
Yeah, okay.
It made
I respect
we were
that.
first two things. We were all drinking, and two, it made sense in my mind.
Also, okay, fair. It does not matter that we were drinking. We would have done it anyway.
Right.
So
one of these times, I'm going to be able to run up a sword. I cannot wait for that opportunity.
So a couple things. Number one, thank you everybody for the super chats. Big special shout out to Sean for coming through huge on there. And so like I said, this was sort of a session -1 because we're going to launch another actual play sometime this year. Once we get kind of things settled and figured out. Obviously people who are members of our Patreon know that we've got Northern Reaches Season 3, a table to build, NightCon, but we Battle Cry 4. There's a lot of stuff that we want to do. But we do want to get an actual play.
Yes.
We've done actual plays. We've done 2 Pathfinder 2s, and now we've done a Root.
Yep.
So part of the idea is that we can showcase some of our favorite systems. But thanks to this super chat and support, you guys have really shown us support for wanting to do things, showing the session zero process, showing this microscope approach. Now, when we did Root, it had its own built-in game system.
Yeah.
But I do think it would be awesome when we do launch this actual play here in the coming weeks or
Well, I
months.
guess it would also depend on the system, right? Because if you do Fabulous Ultimate, they have their own world building. It's not Microscope.
I would say that Microscope is a more detailed and deep.
You just take the pillars.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes, exactly. And it's the same basic concept, because one thing that we did not even get into today is about geography.
That's right. That's a whole other system that we did for a different game.
Is that a different thing?
It's a different
Yes.
thing, because all Microscope cares about
Is
is
events.
is the timeline, the history. Now, you might mention places and things, but you're not really, and you might even sketch out a map.
So what system helps you with the geography?
All right, well, this is a little bit of sneak preview.
Okay.
Okay, you can find this for free online. I've talked about it before. This is called Dawn of Worlds. Okay, it is a game. It is a map drawing game.
Okay.
Where each round you roll dice and you're like some sort of deity in the beginning of the world, forming it. And you get a number of points each round. Here we go. And you can spend those points to do powers. Like you can shape the land or shape the climate or create a new race, or you can create cities, or you can purify them and make them better, or you can make them more evil. And the game is divided into 3 ages, okay? During the first age, shaping the land is really cheap, but creating new races is very expensive. During the second age, creating land becomes a little bit more pricey, but now it's really cheap to create the races. And then in the final age, it's really expensive to create lands and create races. Right. But doing all the other stuff, like having the kingdoms that you've created war and battle with each other, becomes much cheaper.
Yeah, it makes sense if you think about it, right? Creating the world, happens in antiquity, the elder races versus like the humans and halflings. And then by the current age, it's all about politics.
So you can see here like an example, like they quickly just drew out a rough outline of like a continent, right? And then somebody used some PowerPoints to add some mountains. And then somebody else used some PowerPoints to draw in some trees.
I think WASD 20. He does map making.
Yeah.
He did like you just drop a bunch of like rice
Sure.
on
there's
the table,
lots of
and then you
map
just
techniques.
like outline that's your continent.
Yeah.
And whatever. I was like, oh, it's so cool.
Yeah,
You can
I've-
do that with dice, actually.
I've seen
Oh,
people do it with
really?
dice,
Yeah, and like not only does the position of where the dice land matter, but the type of die and the value can also determine what it is. So like if a 6 lands over here, that might be that's a city.
Yeah.
And
That's
it's on the
kinda
river,
cool.
so it's
So
a
like
port town.
I'll give you
Yeah.
an example. When we did this
That's
for
kinda
one of our
cool.
campaigns, we had this big continent, and Aaron spent like the first 2 turns ripping the continent apart into like a northern continent and a southern continent and creating this the inner sea, the inner ocean. That was what he chose to use his God points on, and so like each player kind of goes around and sort of adds their own little elements to the game.
What was really cool,
if there's any
we
other
used this specifically for 13th age. And so what we did was ages 1 through 12, we played this. And so literally the first age, and you saw the PowerPoints, right? The first age, which was, focused on like, the land, geography and stuff like that, right? We're raising the mountains and stuff, right?
Didn't you guys do a mega dungeon for 13th age? Oh, what was the one you guys went down to the dragon?
Dragon stuff. That was Pathfinder 1.
Got it. Okay, continue.
But instead of like the 3 ages they had here, Derek broke out the same kind of point system across the 13 ages. And
12 ages.
12 ages. And then like the idea was the end of an age would always be in like a catastrophe.
Oh yeah, I saw that on there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
And so it was really cool because you built this history and like that's how our icons came to be. And like, there's certain rules of 13th age, right? You're gonna have your 13 icons, right? But when we started in age 1, we had these icons. Some of those icons died and were replaced by the time you got to the last one. So like we ended up with icons that were not from the book. We ended up like the Vadrix, I believe, was like the computer, the AI was one of the icons. I can't remember all the icons that get killed.
we got a bunch
A few of them,
a few of them got killed.
So it was just really interesting, right?
But
Because
it
you
was-
also introduced the idea of like lost icons and stuff. So
But yeah, so this is like a fun little mini game. It's probably more you could just get together with your buddies and sketch up a map and add forests. This is like if you want to make it a little bit more like a game, a little bit more like, crunchy, because you're like, oh, you can save your points up, and then it's like, boom, I just created the dwarves. What up?
That was rich. That was great.
Yeah. So like, and again, you might take a certain kinship, in fact, in this world that we created, dwarves were the great defenders, because in the world that we created, like Cthulhu, basically, the ancient evil mad god was basically trapped in the center of the earth. And so all of like the evil, corrupt things of the earth were like, would come out from the center of the earth. And so the dwarves were actually the guardians.
Oh, they're holding it down.
So their fortresses were designed to defend from below. And in our campaign, the dark elves, the drow, ended up becoming like the dwarves' steadfast allies.
Right.
Oh, that's
and
quite
so
interesting,
in our
actually.
campaign, the drow and the dwarves were like besties because they were like they held the line against the darkness.
Wow, that's kind of cool.
And like in our game, elves didn't live in forests; they lived on the sea.
Yeah.
They actually like were born and raised and lived their entire lives on like living
and
boats.
They could die.
Waterworld.
Boat.
Yeah. Sailing ships. So like our elves didn't do anything.
That's kinda cool.
Didn't have anything to do with
Trolls
trees.
were a civilized and playable race.
Oh,
Right. Like they were,
Like they weren't evil. They weren't like orcs. They were like elves.
yeah. Actually, all the trolls were like druids.
Yeah.
They were like great custodians of like nature and like the natural places.
I could see that actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, kind of taking the place of elves.
Were they still like weak to fire?
Yes.
Yes.
That's kind of cool.
Actually, because I think the troll was sealed in a volcano.
Yes, correct.
That's kind of sweet.
Idea is that this is another idea. Like Fabula Ultima is a little, Fabula Ultima is like
They did not booth bait. They were really cool. They were still
They were
trolls.
barbers.
They're just shape-shifting trolls.
But Fabula Ultima has this like map sheet that has like just a generic couple outlines of different world maps that you can kind of take and sketch out your world. You can also, I've seen, there's a really great, someone might post it in chat, but there's a really great website that is like it's like a GitHub repository. It's like a Python script that creates entire continents.
Oh yeah. That's a great tool. I forgot the name of it.
And I don't remember the name of it.
Google one page dungeon because it's all on the same site. And the map piece you're talking about is really amazing because not only does it generate the world and like all the statistics in it and what all the people live in there, it then links to other tools where if you click on a city, you go to the city creator and it loads the metadata from the main map into the second generator. So, I mean, it's a campaign generator box. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it. Asgars. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, incredible tool.
Yeah. So this
This is all generated.
This
And you
is-
can just recreate it if you want.
you can just hit recreate and you can just create new worlds.
Tons of controls and stuff. But if you zoom in here too, like
You can see there's towns and
and then click on a town.
it's got information, the
Yep.
map,
Jeez.
Yep.
and it's all procedural. So if I click here, I can change some of the color and the looks and all the other stuff. And I can also just, create a new map and boom, there we go. A
Yep.
new map. But again, like you could use this.
Just save that in the old pins.
Oh, yeah, it's a great
and,
tool.
You could use
bookmark.
this and then sort of, you could ignore the names. You could just use the outline of the continents. Or, like I said, with the power of this and things like GitHub, or not GitHub, ChatGPT, it's okay to let some of this stuff, influence you and be part of it. Again, you're using it for your own stuff. In fact, I would also go a step further. I know it. I'm definitely understand why people are opposed to it for commercial uses. But when we did our Trello game there many years ago, there was no such thing as DALL-E or Midjourney.
Right. Yeah.
Now you could just create.
Oh yeah.
When you create
our
when you
aeons
create
and
an
stuff,
artifact,
yeah.
when you create a special, the Knights of Flame,
Yeah.
you could go to Midjourney and make a cool artwork and put it into your Trello board. Again,
Yeah.
it's just for you and your friends. So
Yeah.
it's not for any sort of like publishing or anything like that. And so, yeah, that's like really, really cool. I love Steven so much. So I use that tool to create the world of Alucard map for Alice.
I don't know if he's joking or not.
I think he's.
I like they even have like their crests and stuff. It's like really kind of sweet.
No, this thing is really,
It's an
really
incredible
awesome.
tool.
Yeah, this is an incredible tool.
It's like talks about
You
the
can't
sea
even
level.
see the detail that goes into this thing. It's actually nuts.
Yeah. But again, you could use as much or as little as you want. You know, you could use every little detail here, or you could just use the outlines of the kingdom. And it's the same thing, like I said, you can use, you could use Tome of Adventure Design, and, you know, use that as a source, use the toolbox as a source. You know, I've talked about these things here before. You know, like if we go to page 1 cities, you know, I can roll randomly and be like, okay, I've got a giant city with the architecture is Aztec, and let's take a look here. It's ruled by give me a number between 1 and 20, Bob.
17.
It is ruled by feudalism. So we have this feudal city and
Of Aztecs.
of Aztec, well, Aztec-like.
Yeah.
And
The feudal city moved into the Aztecs.
Yeah, and again, you could just roll a couple ideas, and then you just get an idea, and you go, "Oh, cool! I'm gonna put this into the game."
Yeah.
You know, if it fits our tone, if it fits our type of style, and I think that's really
these tools
really
are great.
I think that's just really really fun and powerful. And again, he really says, "I'm not joking. Just the outline of the
Yeah, I saw that.
I love it." Yeah, so there you go. I mean, there's a lot of great tools out there. Now, is Microscope a fun game? Yes. I think
It's as fun as you make it with your group.
but again, too, like, there's something there is. Again, it's like Path Builder. I think sometimes just creating the world, you can create a lot more worlds than you can play in. You know, and I think too, and you can definitely see that with this other game. There's a desire, and this is words of caution, lessons learned.
Mm-hmm.
There could be a desire to squeeze everything into one campaign.
Yeah, don't do that.
You know,
Yeah, I could see that.
there's a desire to have that. You know, you're like, I had this cool idea and this cool idea. I love this thing. I love that 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 thing. I may only ever get to play one D&D campaign in my whole life. It's got to be this. It's got to be all in there. Okay. I used to actually have the opposite of problem back in the day. Like a really cool book would come out, or a really cool module, or really cool adventure.
You make a new campaign.
And I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't use it because I'm like, this campaign that I'm currently running isn't good enough. I need to save it for the good campaign.
Oh,
You know, and I wouldn't use the materials that I had.
that
because-
campaign ever come up?
No, of course not.
No, never.
Right.
Never.
And you don't know. And I mean that in the sense that literally those 2nd edition D&D books, and now those 3rd edition D&D books, and now those 4th edition D&D books are, you know, not in the garbage bin, but they're not played anymore. So there was tons of stuff that came out for 3rd edition D&D that I was like, oh, I'm gonna use this in the next campaign.
We're
And
going to
then
use Tome of Battle for everything.
and then I never did because
For
there
now,
there
this is
wasn't
the
a next
first one.
campaign, and then the edition was over, and we didn't go back and play 3rd edition.
Yeah.
So like I would just say that, like, you know, don't feel the need to squeeze everything into one campaign. You know, use what's interesting to you. If it's something awesome, cool, go with it. Don't worry about the other stuff. You'll get to it in the next campaign, you know, or the next campaign after that. And, you know, even the best and most intentions of campaigns anyways can be over in 5 sessions anyways.
Ain't that the truth?
You know, so you might have these grand plans, 100 session campaign, 3 years straight. And then it's like, after like 7 months, it's like, yeah, sorry, you know, and work got crazy, and that was it. That was the end of the campaign. That's all it ever takes, you know? So yeah, I think that is an important lesson to learn. So,
Yep, absolutely.
And, you know, I guess the other thing I'd add too is tool fatigue, right? Like it could be tempting to like use literally everything that we talked about tonight.
right.
Don't do that. You'll go nuts. You'll go crazy trying to make it all work. This is a case where less is more. And I know it's funny coming from me when I write paragraphs of text for freaking nights that didn't even show up in the campaign because we didn't play it that long. But these are tools, right? So really think about what you're trying to do, what you're trying to do for your group, what's going to really mesh well with the group, what's not going to work well, and pick it, right? Kind of like I said at the beginning of the stream, like these are all a bunch of different ideas. Don't try to use it all at once. Pick the ones that work for what you're trying to do for that thing, and don't stress it. Don't feel like, well, what if I don't have every single detail? It's totally fine.
Yeah,
leave lots of blanks.
Right. The rule. Aaron's completely right. The rule of Dungeon Craft: draw maps, leave blanks, applies to this. Draw histories, leave blanks. It's okay. It's okay. That is what you and your group can fill in, and there's always room for future stuff. Just shout out to Nate, who just subscribed. And,
I just saw him. Yeah.
And so he found us from Roll for Combat, and he loves all of our rabbit trails, our little side tangents. Listening to our MCDM review, I never listened to a 3-hour live chat, but I just couldn't stop listening.
That's a hell of a compliment.
Yeah. I still haven't listened to one of these 3-hour lives.
You've done something none of us here have done. Have you ever listened to your own 3-hour chat?
No.
Not chat. He used to do all the APs.
I used to do all the APs.
That's true. Editing.
Multiple times.
Did you enjoy that process?
Not particularly.
Yeah.
But yeah. I like playing,
You like I don't know.
Editing,
No.
editing.
The game was great. I'm saying, did you enjoy editing?
Oh, no. No, I did not.
Like, I love having these conversations. I wouldn't want to listen to us having this conversation.
Right. But if you do,
that's right,
then this is a place for you. Make sure you subscribe, you ring the bell, because that way you'll get notified every time we go live. We go live typically Tuesday, really almost every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, but we do sometimes throw in an occasional live stream. We did last Friday, last week. I talked about woodworking.
That one threw me off because I'm like,
my dad
the social media, and I was like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Well, we were going to play, and then, we had to cancel it the last week because some people were sick, and I was just like, well, we wanted to talk about this anyways, but your dad appreciated it.
My dad came over to play Dungeons and Dragons, and it was surreal because it started off with like a woodworking conversation based off your stream. And I was like, here I am about to play D&D, talking about woodworking, and Derek is nowhere around.
Yeah.
That is a creepy moment. I will say this, big thing of what we do here is when I'm at home, we're even here right now, we're in a studio, right? You can hopefully see that, this is a set, this is not green screen. But we have a massive, he can reach back.
I don't want to actually touch it because I might knock it over.
Yeah, it might fall apart. But, we have the chat up on a big TV, so even during these streams, we try to interact with our chat and not just the super chats and the tips, but what people are saying.
I'm actually,
which, if you're watching this,
I'm actually chatting.
And we randomly
Bob is actually chatting in there.
That's right.
And so, communication and talking, that is what we love about the live streams. But I will say, so being here is awesome. But if you can't catch us, bot is fine.
Yeah.
Then you can listen to us on times 1.5 speed
that's
or
right.
times
2x.
speed. And that way, these 3-hour streams are only 1 hour long.
That's
or,
right.
or 1.5 hours long. So that's like you get twice the Derek for half the time.
But you go through all the spell ranked reviews.
Yeah, then you can get through all spells ranked in 43 hours.
I think we have like 2 or 3 people who've done that.
Yeah.
No. There was
Someone
one person
did,
who said they did it twice. They basically said they're like, you know what? They're like, I'm almost through watching it again. Crazy person.
But I would say also you guys can't always have time to watch them because you guys are also too busy in the Discord talking to everyone in the Discord about all these other stuff too. So you guys are very, very active in the Discord. I'm really active right now in the Dragonbane channel, but the rest of Discord, I don't even know what's going on.
You're also active trying to get into other people's games.
When you say active, I am in their games. I'm playing tomorrow.
Bob is playing in a patron's. Not Bob's game. Bob has a game.
I have my own Dragon Man
But
game.
Bob is playing in a patron's game tomorrow.
That's right.
But that is what Knights of the Last Call is all about. It's about this channel. It's about this chat. But it's really about our community, which is focused on our Patreons, focused on our Discord. There's a lot of other benefits that come with being part of the Knights of the Last Call Patreon. But the biggest by far and away is being a member of the community, getting access to our private Discord server, getting access to our community game server, and just honestly playing a ton of games.
And that can't be understated because if you're still watching and you like conversations like this and you like getting
kudos
into the weeds, well, then the community are people like you. They're people who also want to have these kinds of conversations, right?
Yes.
So if you're not a member and you like this sort of stuff, consider joining. I believe our lowest tier is Knights.
Yeah, we have $5.
$5.
Yeah.
Gets you bonus episodes where we're doing more talking and get you into that Discord with the community games. These are people who think, talk, live, breathe, role-playing games, which is amazing because if you're also looking to play some of these games, and we all know it's hard to get a game, right? You want to play a new game or an itch game or hell, just even classic D&D, you're also dealing with some incredible game masters. We have a kind of like ridiculous ratio of GMs to players.
Yeah, I mean,
We have way more GMs.
have more
Yeah,
GMs
not even
than players.
close.
Yeah, I mean, we have GMs who play,
Of
but,
course.
but most
Yes.
people in our Patreon are GMs.
Very few only player.
Yeah,
I mean, this week
members.
and alone, we have Dragonbane tomorrow, 4E Thursday, S&B, which I think is Scum and Villainy.
Scum and Villainy. Yeah.
Fabulous Ultima on Friday, Spaceship Fridays, which I think is Traveler.
Fridays.
Yeah, and then there's 4E on Saturday,
Don't forget-
Delta Green, Wild Sea mini campaign starting, PF2 someone's running.
And don't forget all the stuff Ben runs.
This is just for
this is just the community
like
server.
open stuff.
Yeah,
for
this is
people.
just like what's happening right
Yeah,
now.
Ben also has
because there's
his-
private games that people have
Yeah.
with like the same 4 people on our Patreon all the time.
We do have people who have like set up campaigns, like Boothby runs people through,
Yep.
like adventure paths and stuff like that. PF2 adventure paths. So it's more of
There's 6 or 8 play-by-post campaigns going on at the
like a
moment.
play-by-post, yeah.
And then, of course, we have our mega campaign. We're currently on break, but we're getting ready for season 3 here very soon. So lots of games.
I don't see the name. Something rule. Do you guys enjoy most of Free League's releases as a graphic
Nate's
designer?
Rule.
As a graphics designer, they do top level graphics.
Look, I'm on the Freely
Okay.
train right now.
Let me quote the Discord.
Oh,
So we have a channel in our Discord which is called Top Messages, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
these are the messages that
like people can vote on.
most
or
people
emoji up.
emoji
Yeah.
down. So if we go down here to the bottom, there's a post from Derek that got voted up and says, I love the Forbidden Land style. Is what I was talking about. I love the Forbidden Land style, but hot damn, that Dragonbane looks good. Not just the art, but the graphics, the sidebars, the fonts, and all. So I definitely agree with you. I think that is incredible. I love the look of that book. That Dragonbane book is gorgeous. I don't think I should buy it, but I probably will. So
This is the only book that I know of that I have that you guys don't.
that is true. I don't own anything from Dragonbane.
I mean, I have no opinion on it because, like, just this whole game popped up right in the middle of, pretty busy time in my life.
Yeah, you were kind of out for a few months there.
Slightly busy.
And when you came back, it was like everyone's talking about Dragonbane.
Yeah, I like. There's multiple Dragonbane campaigns going on. Bob's wanting to run it on Fridays, and also now I'm in a random Forbidden Lands chat, which I don't know what the hell's going on. So I've missed a lot. I got to catch back up.
The
Yeah.
Forbidden Lands is actually pretty
Well, and
deep.
we have-
There's a
and
lot of discussion on Forbidden
Woodby
Lands.
has an alien game that's been going strong. So there's a lot of Free League going on right now.
Yeah, Free League's pretty hot on the Discord, but
Free
in
League,
6
Fabulous
months, who
Ultima.
knows?
Freely and Fabulous Ultima are very hot right now.
Yeah, I would say those are the hottest. And and also too, I think some of the older school games. Pathfinder 2 is kind of like on a cool down because a lot of the fervor, from Northern Reaches is kind of cooled off a little
Season
bit.
3 will heat up a little bit when the rest of Remaster comes out. I think
Yeah.
you'll see more PF2.
You'll see a resurgence.
That's a good point. Yeah. So again,
AD&D is always being played. Ben loves it.
Yeah, Ben loves it. And then of course, later this year, we get the new 5th edition revised.
I'm still pushing for Dune in March.
Right.
Dune 2 comes out, and I'd like to be playing the Dune game.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I'd like to. I've never played 2D20, so I'd like to try that also out. So
Yeah. You know me, I love Dune.
I just want to give me a couple, just test the system
I'm
out.
not gonna lie. I've seen there's 3 trailers for the second Dune movie, and each one is better than the last. And every time I watch them, I just I'm gonna pass out. It's so awesome. So many goosebumps, so many goose pimples, shivers.
We should at least
I'm always
do
skeptical.
a first look type thing or something on the Dune system because I want to see it before the scene.
So I'm pretty. I mean, I love the first one.
the movie.
Yeah, the movie.
Yeah.
By Denis Villeneuve. But
The new one or the
Yeah.
the old one?
the new one.
The new one.
But
okay.
we're going. They are, I think, as part of the hype
IMAX?
up to the Dune 2. They're doing 2 things. One, they're going to re-release Dune in IMAX, Dune
Okay.
1.
Okay.
But I don't know if there's any around us. But
There's
They're not gonna do that at Great Lakes Science
Ironically,
Center.
I think in Pittsburgh. Yeah.
sometimes they don't do it.
Dang.
But they are going to put the original David Lynch's Dune in theaters for like one night or 2
Oh,
nights
boy.
only. Okay?
We gotta go see that, Bob.
We gotta go see that. We
It
have to.
is insane.
It will explain. Well, no, he won't understand any of it.
No. You don't do hard drugs. watching this movie would be like what hard drugs would be like.
But it would explain so much of the way Aaron and I work.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, but
It's
yes,
amazing.
so
It's exciting.
I'm super excited. So I'm obviously I've never seen Lynch's Dune in theaters. Obviously
yeah,
not.
yeah.
I don't know that has been in theaters since 1984
Four,
or 5
apparently,
or whatever
yeah.
it came out. Now Boothby says 2 nights, but it's the shorter version. That's fine.
That's all right.
That's fine. I like there's like 18 different cuts, but a lot of stuff.
Listen, we'll get our weird modules.
We'll get our weirding
and we'll
mod-
get the guy with the mop behind the navigator.
The mop behind the navigator cleaning up the siphon gunk.
It's amazing.
I'm like halfway tempted to like cosplay as like a Fremen with like a weirding module. I just walk around going, yeah. Anyways,
My name is a killing word.
my name is a killing word. They are ready.
Okie
Oh, the
dokie.
monologues. Yes.
But first, I must conquer my fate. I must conquer Shai Halud. It's so
Okie dokie.
It's amazing.
it's amazing. Okay.
amazing.
Anyways,
I guess that's what we're
In the
doing.
worst way possible.
it's
So that's like the first week of March, I think.
it's close.
Just letting you know.
Yeah. So yeah, March will be busy.
So like, I would love to
Because,
do. I would love to do Dune.
Sadly, in March we are not only going to be finalizing and preparing to deliver our table,
That's the plan.
but we'll also be finalizing and preparing to vacate the studio.
That's right. There's a lot of stuff happening.
Yep. Stay tuned for the demolish stream where we
yeah.
take sledgehammers and just break the table.
No,
We're not doing that. We're not doing that.
Okay. Full transparency, because you know me.
Okay.
Full transparency. We're keeping the set walls.
Yes.
Okay, because obviously you know that.
Yeah.
There's a small part of me
You want to redo the table?
that wants to redo
Oh
the
my
table.
Derek
god!
always wants to redo the table.
It's too big.
I don't know what's the future hold, so we don't know.
But the point.
If you would like to buy the official
gosh.
Knights of Last Call table,
like-
now's your chance to join a Patreon and throw us a bid.
it's only $700. I made it big enough so that we could play.
I know
in the
what you
middle.
did.
But we only do theater of the mind stuff. I don't think we're ever gonna like go back.
Oh,
To
you're
the,
talking about-
I don't think we're ever gonna go back to the Pathfinder days where we're like, got the Dwarven Forge and the.
Okay.
You say that, and then we go, man, we should play some Pathfinder 1. And next thing you know, Derek's like, well, all right, guys, typical, we need a new table because the new table, the new table is too small now. So now we need the new table to go back to being big.
Bob knows that's not even that crazy. This is the 4th table.
This is
I
the fourth table.
was being serious.
This table's really big. It's 10 feet in the front, and I know Derek, who's not a light boy, rolled on this table and it didn't even budge.
It did not move.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the table might look like it's rectangular or square. but
it's not.
That's
It's
only
not.
because of the weird angle of the camera. In actuality, the table's trapezoid in shape. It
Yep.
actually flares out that way. Any case, that's going to do it for us.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you, Bob, for hanging out with us and kind of acting as the audience.
I still want to play. I can't
Yeah.
wait to try it out.
Yeah.
Well, apparently we're going to have to do it now. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And thank you, Smith, for obviously all your insights. Smith's been sort of my partner in crime.
Sorry for my long-winded everything.
Look, you know what? We deserved it. I mean, here's the thing. Why did I say all that? Because I was proud of it. I liked the world that we created. I liked the story that we created.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
And
They should make a book series based on that.
You got enough. You got enough material there.
Chandler, you were close with the spelling with mortise and tenon, but not quite there.
No, this is all. This is
This
all
is not.
screws.
This is not mortise and tenon. This is all pocket hole screws.
Yeah.
Because this is just like it's like stage furniture, right? It's
Yeah.
not like fine
We
quality.
just needed it so we could play on it. We needed cubbies. We needed it to be big.
Yeah.
Well, the camera angles were a big
camera
thing.
angles.
Yeah. So
So-
it's plywood.
Yep.
And the interior framing is 2x4.
Honestly, you're right, because whatever space we end up with, there's no guarantee it's going to be exactly this
Correct.
specification.
The dimensions may
So,
have to change. We'll see. So.
yeah.
Unfortunately,
Hey, one less thing to store.
interest rates and home prices are insane. So
Mm-hmm.
no new home for Derek anytime soon. But
Yes, we're going to be in exile soon, I
we'll
believe.
be in exile. So Smith has already drawn up some some
I saw
potential
sketches. Yeah, I saw
So
sketches.
you never.
Derek's all pro. Uses CAD. I use literally. I didn't even use.
I didn't know
MS
what
Paint.
you used.
I use Sketch. It's worse than MS Paint.
I couldn't tell what you were
It was
using
bad.
for that. I was going to take it and put it into CAD, and I was like, just let this go.
I've reinstalled Adobe, so the next one will be better. But
There you go. But again, thank you everybody for coming out with us and hanging out with us tonight. Thank you for talking about it. If you have questions about collaborative world building, certainly stay tuned because we're going to do more talks about it. Obviously, we had a lot of interest in it, and it's something that is near and dear to my heart. And we're going to be doing our own collaborative world building here on the stream sometime here in the near future when we get ready for our upcoming campaign. And of course, if you do have questions, leave them in the comments below, or better yet, hop on to the Patreon, check us out on the Discord, and you can just ping me directly, and me and 26 other people will answer. And before you know it, you'll be chatting 16 hours a day. So
also, don't worry about the time. Derek literally will respond to you at 3 a.m.
that is about accurate.
And if not, someone else usually is up.
So, so thanks to everyone, and we'll see you next time on Nights of Last. Hold on a sec. There we go. Last Call. Bye, everybody. Peace.